You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Force 13 Live, we are still tracking a Category 5 typhoon as it looms large over the northern Philippine islands. It's likely to make landfall somewhere in the Bicol Region early in the morning, in the early hours most likely of Sunday morning. Latest indications showing that a landfall could occur on Catanduanes or even south of there. With the latest storm movement still southwest, it's almost on a level with Catanduanes already there in terms of latitude. So there is a chance that this storm will go the same way as the last one did, Malawi, once it reaches the Philippines. Nonetheless, a lot of warnings are in effect. Signal 3, we're waiting to see whether there'll be Signal 4 warnings at the 8 PM update from PAGASA, which is due at any moment. And we'll bring that to you if that does materialise. But in any case, we're here to discuss and hopefully help. And if you've got any questions for us whilst we're on the air, you can always send us a message. Start your message with Force 13 all in text if you're watching us on YouTube. Or on our Facebook stream, you can just send in a message there and one of our people will pick that up for you. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined here right now by Farhan and Paul. Good evening to you both.
Good evening to you,
Good
Nathan,
evening.
from the Philippines.
Yep, we have the Philippines and Indonesia on board tonight. And just as we go and switch room there, we're just figuring out what's going on with this storm right now. Its intensity, we're estimating 175 miles per hour still. Extremely powerful, Farhan.
Oh, no doubt about it. I'll be perfectly honest. When Goni first formed, as a reasonable observer that I am, I have some doubts, some conservatism, perhaps, because as I said the previous time I was on here, the models has been showing a storm like this for months, and none of this has materialized. So when Goni forms, I have some doubts that it could really be a monster. But Goni, in the spirit of this wacky old year, decided to smash that out of the way and become what could only be described as a monster.
The GFS model earlier today initialized this storm with a pressure of 880 millibars. Do you think that could be even remotely true?
I mean, I would say no, but a lot of people, a lot of the more knowledgeable people in our Discord server say that it honestly could. And the only reason that we don't have it that low is because the satellite methods that are in use in the Western Pacific have basically maxed out. It cannot go any more than the 890s. And two, the only other method to go lower than that is recon, which, as we all know, is non-existent here.
Paul, you're watching this from Cebu. You'll still get some of this storm in terms of rainfall effects, but no wind there, I don't think.
Yes, and no wind because as of now, there's it actually is raining right now. So back to the topic. PAGASA, since it's literally too far here in Cebu, has said that there will not be any signal numbers that will be raised here in the southern Visayas. But PAGASA also said that even though that there is no TCWS signal, we will still need to expect gusts of wind with heavy, moderate to heavy rains.
Yep, we're still waiting to see whether that information has come in yet. I'm not seeing it on PAGASA's website, although sometimes they update first on social media, don't they?
Yes, and sometimes they actually update on their website. Sometimes they actually update on their Facebook page, which is confusing. So I am now opening both tabs actually.
Alright, we'll see if we can get that news whenever we can. But as of right now, this storm is probably... Okay, if it was to make landfall on Catanduanes, landfall will probably be in about 6 or 7 hours. But there is a possibility that it will miss and pass south even. And then you'd be looking at a landfall either in Albay or Camarines. And even, you know, you still can't rule out the storm goes north of Catanduanes at this point. But at the moment, the way it's going right now, still a generally southwestward movement. It does look to be sinking a little bit more than expected. That
Yeah,
might actually be good news for places like Manila, which would mean the storm would pass further south again. But those areas that were just hit by Malawi last week, that's definitely not good news.
It's very bad news, actually.
some of them have not really recovered from the storm, and it's actually gonna be very bad news.
Let's just point out the latest warnings as of the 5 p.m. update, which we'll get an update for soon, hopefully. Assuming they are doing an update at 8 p.m. I mean,
Yeah, they will.
Okay. So Signal 3 warning there in effect for those areas that I aforementioned. Signal 2 warnings extending to Manila and beyond. Signal 1 even into northern Leyte now. And the JMA track there on the left-hand side of your screen is showing a Catanduanes landfall. And again, that's in about, they're calling that for about 9 hours from now. And then taking it just so slightly south of Manila and then on towards the South China Sea. And unfortunately, again, Vietnam could be in for another tropical cyclone impact from this one as well. Just after the last one and the tons of storms that they've already had this year, terrible conditions in Vietnam right now. Unfortunately, there could be more on the way after this even, with Atsani and other systems that long-range models are forecasting. But let's take them one at a time, and this is the absolute massive storm that we've got right now. It's the massive priority. 175 mile an hour winds, that's around 280 kilometers per hour, sustained winds inside that storm, to our best estimates at least. Pressure estimate that we've got right now, 899 millibars, so this is pretty much on par, even now, still on par with Mankut for intensity. It beat Mankut yesterday and earlier today, but still level with it this close, so it's getting pretty serious. We'll take questions and comments. Let's start with Always Fair, who says, are the Philippine authorities taking this seriously? When Typhoon Haiyan hit, there wasn't many evacuations.
Oh, so probably in the news actually, there has been reports of LGUs preparing. The case for Haiyan is actually, and during the landfall, people were never expecting the storm surge to be that devastating. And worst of all, not many people were educated on what a storm surge was. That was when until the aftermath of the storm, that's when they were educated. So even after every storm, they would always facilitate those kinds of stuff. For example, disaster reliefs, aerial surveillance, stuffs.
Mm-hmm. So Goni is of course the international name. You'll also see the name Raleigh mentioned a lot as well. That's the PAGASA name for the storm, and we'll be using that as well. We've got plenty more questions. Does Raleigh look like it is enlarging?
it actually is enlarging.
Yeah, most storms do tend to grow larger generally over the course of days, and also over hours when you have eyewall replacement cycles. And Farhan, there's been a few of those recently, haven't there?
Yes, in fact, I believe there has been at least two of them. I I was asleep when the first one happened, so I'm not exactly preview to what happened then. But I do know the second one was a merger eyewall replacement cycle, which is not good because it means it will maintain as much of its strength as possible while also growing larger.
Yeah, that's definitely not good news. Will it make a Category 5 landfall? The latest we're giving for percentage chances about 45%. It's a coin toss, I would say, at this point almost, as to whether it will still be a Category 5 by the time it
Breaking
gets there.
news! PAGASA has now released their severe weather bulletin just now. But the problem is with their in their website they don't actually put the picture on the TCWS signals. They just put the track. But anyways, track has been very consistent within
Signal
the
4,
last.
is it?
Yeah, wait,
Yep,
let me
we've
see.
got Signal 4.
Yeah, signal number 4.
So that's the news right now for Signal 4 warnings for Catanduanes and the eastern portion of Camarines Sur.
About time.
About time, indeed. So, Signal 4 along the coast now. If you thought this wasn't serious, then maybe the minds are changing a little bit more at this point with Signal 4 warnings coming into play. We'll get a graphic of that as soon as they update their graphic. But
In
that's
Facebook.
but that's the news. Okay, we'll try and get that. That's the news we've got right now. Signal 3, trying to find out how far that extends. As far as the southern portion of Quezon and Marinduque. So those areas now under Signal 3. Signal 2, obviously still for Manila. And trying to figure out how far north that extends. We'll find out at some point.
When you actually look at their 8 p.m. bulletin, their track is consistent with the previous two bulletins about 12 hours ago. A south scheme for Metro Manila.
Yeah, so just to affirm that, just once more, Signal 4 warnings now in effect for Catanduanes and Camarines Sur. Is Atsani getting ripped apart by Goni? Well, let's take a look back at the wide shot and you can see, well, see if you can spot Atsani. It is there, but it's very much under Goni's shadow. Once Goni makes landfall and moves into the South China Sea, models are suggesting that Atsani will have a chance to intensify, and the latest projections have at least a typhoon landfall on Luzon again in about 6 or 7 days time. And then also watching another system that's lurking over there on the right hand side of your image near Micronesia and the Marshall Islands. You've got an area of interest which will eventually it could eventually become a tropical cyclone. We're not sure just yet. 20% chance in 5 days, and that could move on towards the Philippines as well. So we're not getting much of a respite here, and this sometimes happens in late season West Pacific seasons, I'm afraid. But Goni is, I mean, even by those standards, Goni is a remarkable storm, probably in the I was going to say top 1%, but it's probably even higher than that. Probably top 0.1%.
It has been talked about already as going down as one of the great quote unquote the great of West Pacific typhoons.
Yeah, we're still waiting to see if we can get that graphic on screen. We'll get that as soon as we can. Signal 4 warnings now in effect. How strong will this be when it reaches Metro Manila?
So, early land interaction on Albay will actually weaken the storm. So, it will impact Manila, but not as powerful as when it will impact Albay and Catanduanes due to the
Definitely.
weakening.
Why is the track going more south? I assume, Farhan, I'm not sure, not absolutely sure, but I assume it's an underestimation of the high pressure that's pushing it.
Well, we did talk about this the last stream I was on about the high pressure area being a determining factor of uh, where the storm will go, and it looks like the models have underestimated how strong it will be. Instead of weakening and making it go more north, it looks like it has weakened and moving it more south. And I believe there is also some upper anticyclonic phenomenon that I can think of the top of my head right now, but there are also some other factors that are affecting the ridging of Goni.
That's what it appears to be, considering it's been moving rather slowly as well. It's being
Yeah.
steered around. There it is again, still southwestward motion at this point. One or two suggestions that it was moving more west, but I think that might be on the rapid scan on that inset there. You can see just a little wobble to the west, but general movement is southwest. You don't want to look too closely for direction when you look at the rapid scan, because it's doing all kinds of wobbling the eye, and the general motion still southwest. But if you didn't hear at the start of this broadcast, the latest GFS model is suggesting that the eye will now pass south of Catanduanes, which would be quite remarkable if that was to occur.
We were expecting it to actually landfall in central Luzon just days ago, and look where we are now.
Yeah, it was heading that way, and sometimes this does happen, and it's difficult to forecast. It's happened in a few occasions before. Will Bulacan province experience typhoon force winds?
Will what?
Bulacan?
Bulacan. Oh, okay. So Bulacan is actually just north of Metro Manila. So if PAGASA's track were to be followed, you will more or less experience signal number 3 winds, more or less. Still pretty lethal, still pretty life-threatening.
Let's see what else we have here. It looks like it has better outflow, and how does this impact the intensity fluctuations? I must say, the cloud tops, when you look at this imagery in particular, the yellows there, that's minus 80 degree cloud tops, have been expanding a lot in the last few hours. The thing is though, the eye temperature's not been the best. Last estimate was -3. But I tell you one thing, if that eye temperature goes back up again, and those cloud tops are still there, then this storm might best its peak from yesterday.
So probably a chance of re-intensifying? Is that what you're saying?
It's got about 6 or 12 hours left before shear starts rising from 10 to 20 knots. And then of course you've got land interaction, which will, decimate the storm hopefully in short order. I'm not sure whether it will, since it's going to be moving possibly over more water yet, but it will certainly weaken the storm. But until it gets to Catanduanes, we could see intensification still. So it was -3 just before we started the stream on our latest final SATID, which took the previous 2 hours of imagery. We're hearing that raw data right now is suggesting that it might be back up to +12. So if that's the case, this could be back in the 180s, even towards 190 miles per hour again, like it was yesterday.
Oh my god.
Oh,
I'm not saying that's the case already, but that could be the case soon. That's not good news. What is the CDPS for this storm right now? I haven't looked at it since yesterday when it was a stage 6, or this morning, Philippine time, when it was a stage 6 on that 10-tiered scale. But nonetheless, catastrophic, I would say, especially if you're near the landfall zone. This is a category 5, and not just barely. It's got winds of at least 175 miles per hour sustained. That's 280 kilometers per hour. Signal 4 warnings now in place. Do you think they'll ever pull the Signal 5 trigger on this?
Okay, so about that, I have mentioned this yesterday night. Signal number 5 warnings will actually only be issued when the storm is actually a super typhoon, because the requirements for the declaration of signal number 5 is 220 kilometers per hour and above. As long as the category of super typhoon in PAGASA scale, also 220 kilometers per hour. As of their 8 p.m. Bulletin, they're still sticking with 215 kilometers per hour. So about 5 kilometers per hour shy of super typhoon category.
We're trying to refresh that graphic. It's just thrown up an error on us. I can see that they've done it. And hopefully that will work in a minute, that we'll be able to see the 8 p.m. Warnings displayed on the map. I don't know if we're going to get that or not. Whilst we wait for that, on the left hand side again is the forecast from the Japanese Meteorological Agency. They're expecting a landfall in about 9 hours time, and then the storm to move on into the South China Sea and then towards the coast of Vietnam. Now, something's going on in the background over there.
Yeah, probably a lot of visitors in your house.
We are joined by Ike at this point.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Good
Ike. How's the conditions over there since you're in Laguna?
It's not really that windy, as you can see in my webcam.
Oh, there's actually been a question in the Philippines stream.
We'll get your webcam in just a minute and that question, but we've finally got that image loaded,
Okay, finally.
showing the signal 4 warnings there for Catanduanes and part of Camarines Sur. So that is explaining again where those warning areas are, and signal 2 extending further north, signal 3 extending further west. Signal 1 zones might have expanded just slightly. So there's your full picture right now. Paul.
Yeah?
Go ahead with that question.
So, the question was, will it hit metropolitan Manila, Metro Manila, Taguig City to be exact? So, I have said that Metro Manila will actually experience the brunt of the storm. That includes Taguig City, because Taguig City is actually in Metro Manila.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of questions about there, actually. And in fact, let me just go back and check the wind speed probabilities. There are about 46 million people under 10% chance for typhoon conditions right now. I'm just going to check what it is for Manila itself. The percentage chances there, for talking statistics, typhoon conditions, about 50%. That's quite high when you're talking typhoon probabilities.
Yeah.
So you're definitely, I would say, based on that, you're definitely going to get tropical storm conditions. And actually the statistics suggest that it's over a 90% chance. And probably disruptive winds for Manila and the wider area.
I'm still in disbelief why PAGASA hasn't really upgraded this as super typhoon. They're still sticking with 215 kilometers per hour in the last 3 bulletins.
Ike, any thoughts of that as we look out at your place there?
Pagasa is pretty much downcasting this storm.
Yeah, pretty much. I really think they should now actually upgrade the storm. it's looking more of like a super typhoon than a typhoon. But then again, they're still sticking with 215 kilometers per hour, which is downcasting.
Well, we don't want to officially make accusations against the forecasters,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but that was in my opinion.
it is quite clear that the typhoon is very strong. Our satellite estimates have at least 175 miles per hour. Let me just check what the Dvorak estimates are saying right now. NOAA ADT is saying this storm is 165 miles per hour. That's a little bit low, although it has been lowballing the whole time. It only peaked it at 175 when it was clearly higher. Let me just check SIMS ADT, which is another method of estimating the winds. They're saying 152 knots, which is just over 175 miles an hour. A T number of 7.4, which is quite impressive indeed. And high temperature suggesting that it's still increasing here, with the center temperature according to SIMS of 12.1. I think we're struggling with signal somewhere there.
I think it's Ike speaking, but I think yeah, it is Ike.
Okay, let's see if we can get some more questions whilst we're going along here. Is Typhoon Goni mimicking the path of Typhoon Malawi there?
Pretty much, yeah, but Molavi exited on northern Mindoro, but this time, Goni will actually exit, southern Luzon. But the initial areas of landfall will actually be the same as with Molavi, mainly Catanduanes and Albay.
Will Lian Batangas be impacted by this typhoon? Most definitely, I
So,
would think.
yeah, Batangas is at the, um, yeah, tip, oh, there it is. So, Batangas, southern Luzon pretty much might get some signal number 3 winds. Maybe signal number 2, signal number 3, depending on the weakening of the storm.
Yeah, and the thing is about this, interesting to note that some models, the GFS and the HWRF, for some reference there, are suggesting that this storm will capitulate in a most remarkable manner from Category 5 status to only tropical storm status when it passes Manila. I don't believe that's true for a second, by the way. I think it's going to be much stronger than that. But why do we think the models are suggesting that that is going to happen here?
Say again? It's actually choppy in my end, sorry.
Oh, just about the models and why they're suggesting that this storm will capitulate so heavily by the time it reaches land.
Actually, to be honest, I have no thoughts on that yet. Maybe you can ask Orhan.
Yeah, I just think it's curious. I
Well.
think the storm will outperform that.
Well, you know, considering the models has been wrong about quite a lot of things about the storm so far, maybe I guess you could just say that it's completely whack.
Whack. Yeah.
More questions about Manila and advice regarding there. So do you want to start by talking about what winds to expect at this point and how best to prepare for the storm there?
Oh, okay. So, Catanduanes. Let's start with Catanduanes, the initial
Okay.
landfall. So, if you can see right now, we have shown the TCWS map. And as of now, Catanduanes and Camarines Sur, was that Camarines Sur? On signal number 4. So pretty much, since you're in the first landfall area, you will experience the brunt of the storm. By then, when it actually interacts with land, it might weaken, and then maybe in the areas following the first landfall at Catanduanes, they may actually feel not as powerful winds as Catanduanes did due to the land interaction and weakening. So again, probably in Metro Manila, Batangas, Bulacan, the surrounding areas, you might experience signal number 3 winds already there. But again, that actually depends on the rate of weakening. I cannot say because it really depends on PAGASA's say.
Now, I know that Catanduanes is obviously very exposed there on the eastern coast, and they regularly get hit by very strong typhoons.
Yes.
Are people more prepared over there than, say, in Manila?
So actually, in the previous storm, which is Molave, there has been news about people actually staying in the evacuation zone for like 2 weeks already. So probably in this, as the onset of Goni is approaching, they might actually stay longer than they are supposed to do. Be, again, because of the unexpected intensity of the storm. So my guess is actually they're more than prepared, but again, we cannot be complacent at all because it's been a long time since we've had a powerful storm that has landfall here, and things might actually change.
What is true, though, is the chances of this storm now making a Category 5 landfall are gradually increasing, with only between 6 and 9 hours until landfall if it was to strike Catanduanes, which it's sort of heading for there. Still a possibility it could pass south of there, which is a new development this evening, and then move through the the southern coast of Luzon, which is sort of what Molave did. It gives me a bad feeling.
Me too, not gonna lie.
More questions.
It will.
Oh, go ahead.
Go. No, never mind.
More questions coming in. Is a lot of comparisons to Angela, actually. Is Goni stronger than Angela? Will the track be like Angela? Philippine name Rosing. That was the enormous storm that struck in almost to this day, actually, in 1995. That storm, we estimate, was slightly stronger than this one. A wind speed of approximately 200 to 205 miles per hour. Extremely powerful storm, Angela. This isn't far from it. It's a little bit smaller than Angela, I believe. What the thing is that the official take on Angela is that it maintained Category 5 right the way up until landfall. I've just done a reanalysis on that last week, which suggested that the storm started to weaken before landfall. So it was still powerful by the time it went through central Luzon, but wasn't a Category 5. And this shouldn't be either by the time it gets to central Luzon, but this could still make a Category 5 landfall on Catanduanes or even in Albay or Camarines.
And if that does happen, it will be the strongest landfall ever since the one and only Haiyan Philippine name Yolanda.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. No, it is not. It is Moranti.
Yeah, Moranti, yeah, of course.
It's Moranti.
Oh,
Yeah.
Moranti, yes, I forgot about Moranti.
About the same intensity as Yolanda.
But the thing
I
is,
forgot about
yesterday,
Moranti.
this storm briefly eclipsed, according to our estimates, Moranti.
So, probably also, in your estimates, what was your estimate of Moranti again?
Our estimate for Moranti, I think, was 185 miles an hour, pressure of 894. We had this yesterday at, well, we had 190 and 895, I think, and then it was 185 and 891. Oh, so many numbers. But regardless, it's in the category that houses Moranti and Haiyan, unfortunately.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it's just very impressive. No sign of weakening, substantial weakening yet. And if that eye is back up to 12 degrees and sustains it for any length of time, you'll be looking at an upgrade back from 175 back into the 180s most likely. Let's see if we've got some more questions, and please send them in. Start your message with Force 13 all in text on YouTube or on Facebook if you're watching us there. Just send in a message and Paul will pick that up. Any there just now?
None as of right now, Nathan.
Okay. Ray Ron asks, how will it affect a rambutan tree with signal number 4? That's a question for Paul and Ike because I've no idea.
So, shall I go first? Okay, so basically, signal number 4, just like we've seen from Yolanda, that was actually a signal number 4 because there was no signal number 5 yet.
Yep.
Again, signal number 5 was introduced due to Yolanda. So in signal number 4, pretty much there will be uprooted trees. So
Yeah,
probably
definitely.
a rambutan tree might actually be uprooted.
Most trees.
Everything will
Yes, go ahead, Ike.
everything will be damaged for places
Yeah.
under signal 4.
Especially houses made with light materials.
Oh yeah, well,
That will be pretty much demolished.
that's gonna
Yeah.
go. I mean, trees that do survive in signal 4 areas will most likely be defoliated. Especially if you get anywhere near Category 5 winds. The sheer strength of the storm just tears everything off a tree, leaving just sort of a skeleton, really.
On that note, just a few hours ago, someone made a comment about in public survey about their house. It was built right after durian, Philippine name ramming. It is made out of concrete, reinforced concrete, and they said that they think their house gonna survive, but their roof is probably gonna be gone because it was blown off by 150 kilometers an hour wind. So 250 to
Oh, dear.
220 will probably just blow it right clean off.
Yeah, and it's
So-
not just these, even especially on these islands, especially if you're near the coast, building, what's the word I'm looking for? The strength of a building sometimes doesn't matter either because storm surge will run in there.
By the way, PAGASA has increased the possible depth of the storm surge from 2 meters to 3 meters. I forgot to note that on the
Uh-huh.
last on stream.
Well, that's also fairly important, especially for the areas that will be affected first.
Yeah,
Let's actually read out the information from PAGASA. Tonight, the outer rain bands of Raleigh will bring light to moderate with at times heavy rains over Bicol Region, Visayas and Quezon. Beginning tomorrow early morning, the passage of Raleigh will bring heavy to intense rains over Metro Manila, Bicol Region, Calabazon, Aurora, Bulacan, Zambales, Bataan, Marinduque, Romblon, Occidental Mindoro and Oriental Mindoro. And apologies if I get the pronunciations wrong there, as I'm sure Paul would point out if I did. Moderate to heavy rains with at times intense rains will be experienced over Cagayan Valley, pretty much the whole area in the northern and central Luzon, including flash floods, rain-induced landslides and sediment-laden stream flows, which may occur during heavy or prolonged rainfall. That's the rainfall aspect. That's before you get to the strong winds. Very
which is
destructive
another. Yeah, very destructive.
typhoon force winds under signal 4. Destructive typhoon force winds under signal 3. Damaging gale to storm force winds in number 2. And strong breeze to near gale conditions in areas under signal 1. And the storm surge. A high risk of storm surge of more than 3 meters over the northern coastal areas of Quezon, including Polillo Islands, Camarines provinces, and Catanduanes. 2.1 to 3 meters over the coastal areas of Manila, Cavite, Bulacan, Pampanga, Bataan, the southeastern coastal area of Batangas, and the southwestern coastal area of Quezon. So 2+ meters still for those areas. and between 1 and 2 meters for Aurora, Zambales, Occidental Mindoro, the rest of the coastal areas of Bicol, Batangas, and Quezon within 24 hours, which may result in life-threatening and damaging coastal inundation.
Yeah. By the way, Nathan, we have a question in the Facebook stream. Will we see a surprise strengthening of the storm or a last-minute change of track for Goni?
Whether it's a surprise, I don't think so. I mean, anything could happen with this storm. It would be a bad news and not the surprise we want. We'd like a pleasant surprise where the storm just completely capitulates and destroys itself, but unfortunately, it doesn't appear as though that's happening.
I was personally surprised already about the sudden change of the forecasted track. Because again, yesterday we were expecting it to cross central Luzon, but here we are now expecting it to hit Catanduanes, the same place that has been hit by Molave.
It's not good news. So there it is again on the wider shot. This is a Category 5 typhoon with estimated winds on satellite of 175 miles per hour, which is 280 kilometers per hour sustained, with higher gusts, an estimated central pressure 899 millibars. I'm going to see if I can get some more satellite data and see if we can figure out something new here. So I don't know who wants to speak at this point, but the floor's open.
Nathan, I really hate to take any sort of wind away from Goni because I really don't want to, but in the Atlantic, ATCF has issued a tropical cyclone formation alert for Invest 96M.
Oh boy.
Even in this moment, the Atlantic still wants to come in kicking and screaming.
We've got to at least give it a mention then. This is what the Atlantic looks like. You can see that blow up there, just south of Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic and Haiti. That is what looks to be a developing tropical cyclone to me from a distance. That will probably get named within 24 hours, and that's yet another Atlantic storm. A record-busting name, which we've never had so many named storms in a season. That will be number 28, the 29th cyclone. I think I'm losing track. I think it's 29th cyclone and 28th named storm. One of them was just a depression.
That is correct. TD10L.
Yep, and models suggesting that could either or could strike all of these places: Central America, Nicaragua, Honduras, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Cuba, and GFS suggesting at their last run that it will go through the Florida Keys and up the western coast of Florida. So that is something to look out for. It might not do that still. It might curve towards the northeast, but the main areas of concern are those places in the Caribbean Sea for this storm that could be about to develop. My goodness. But back to the Western Pacific picture, which is the main subject tonight. And we'll take questions on everything, but no doubt most of our coverage will be on Goni. I believe we're also joined by Isaac right now.
Good evening.
Good morning to you, Isaac, over there in Texas. So we've got people all around the world at this point.
Yeah, this is just, truly incredible how this storm is still kind of holding on here. It was supposed to be weakening at this point, but it's still trying to hold on here, at least somewhat, to its intensity right now.
It's not really just holding, I think it's coming back here.
Yeah, it's just incredible. It really stresses to people in the Philippines here to be taking this typhoon seriously here. There's not going to be a run-of-the-mill, Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane typhoon that they're seeing over there. This is going to be perhaps a devastating typhoon for you guys, and I really hope that you guys are listening to your local officials here. If they're telling you to evacuate ahead of this storm and you still have enough time to, please do it. This is a serious typhoon here we're looking at, and I just really hope you're taking it seriously. This is a I mean, you're staring right now at still a Category 5 equivalent typhoon here, a super typhoon, and it's just, I, I still have no words for it. It's just truly incredible how this is still looking so good, just that this far off the coastline.
Good lord. I must say, looking at the satellite imagery right now, now you've got to wait a few hours to, get a more accurate blend, but it's strengthened in the last 2 hours, I can tell you that. And if that's continuing, then this is going to reflect in further forecasts. If the eye temperature is indeed 12 degrees and that holds, it now also has easily a yellow ring of minus 80 degree cloud tops. In fact, you could even argue it's a yellow ring of minus 82 or even 84 degree cloud tops, which is astonishing, and that, in my view, probably puts it on a level with Angela.
Yeah, keep in mind this. Go ahead.
The new GMA cone has just come out, and it actually agrees with GFS, in which it takes it south of I can't pronounce the name of the island, but it takes it south of it.
Catanduanes?
Yes, it's going south now, with a landfall
wow.
now at 0 UTC, November 1st.
There it is.
Wow.
It looks to me as though it still clips Catanduanes, but on the southern side, and that would be in about, just short of 0Z, which is about 5, 6, 7 in the morning in the Philippines.
Okay, so I have noticed a little bit of a difference from JMA's latest track than from PAGASA. So PAGASA's track is actually a little bit north to the JMA track. As you can see, it actually is going a little bit south. Yeah, it is actually. So most probably Batangas and Batangas.
And then out into the South China Sea, JMA suggests that it will weaken to below storm strength and then actually regain it before it reaches Vietnam briefly. That's interesting to see.
Actually, just right above Taal volcano, the JMA trap.
Gosh, yeah, I can imagine that for sure. The current storm movement still looks to be southwest, slowly, and it's still trending south and trending slower, rather than we were thinking a couple of days ago that landfall would be overnight tonight. It's now suggesting that landfall might not be until till maybe sunrise in the morning. If you do have any questions or comments for us whilst we're on the air, we're going to stay a little bit longer today. I'm not sure exactly how long, but we appreciate there's a lot of questions that people want to ask. Start your message with Force13 all in text on our YouTube chat, or just message us on Facebook, and Paul will take your questions on that stream, because we are on both. And kilometers per hour, just a reminder there. So at the moment, 175 miles per hour, which is about 280 kilometers per hour. That's sustained winds estimated by satellite, and it's quite possible that it will strengthen further now at this point. Could landlocked provinces get storm surge from Goni? Somehow doubt
No,
that.
actually, PAGASA isn't just actually expecting a storm surge to happen in coastal areas, Catanduanes, and actually a storm surge also in Manila Bay, in Metro Manila. Okay, so we have a follow-up question here.
Sorry?
I have just noted we have a question here. I just want to answer it. So, is it possible that Bulacan will be raised to signal number 4? So, if the JMA track persists, or actually be confirmed, it might actually be raised to signal number 4, but I doubt that because, again, we're expecting a land interaction here, and land interaction equals weakening. So probably I can give it signal number 3.
For Bulacan,
Bulacan, yeah.
Bulacan. I'll get my pronunciations right one day. I can't see it happening there. But there
Yeah.
could be typhoon conditions.
By the way, Nathan, I would just like to say something. Is it okay?
Yes.
So there has been confusion actually regarding the information on JTWC and JMA and PAGASA on why JTWC's readings are higher than and then PAGASA's. For example, JTWC is now forecasting 280 kilometers per hour.
You know what? I haven't even seen it recently, but I imagine
Okay,
that's the
so
case.
yeah, so important to note that JTWC is using a 1 minute sustained wind measurement,
That's also
and
true.
PAGASA with JMA is um, using a 10-minute sustained wind measurement. So, of course, it's gonna be slower on PAGASA and JMA's information than JTWC's.
Yeah, at the last update here, they've still got it at 180 miles per hour, which I'm forgetting already what that is. I think it's 290 kilometers per hour. And calling probably, well, the non-committal, maybe a borderline Category 5 landfall, they're thinking. And they are calling for substantial weakening when it does make landfall, but still Category 2 when it's leaving Manila.
Actually, got a question here. What is the worst case scenario for Metro Manila?
Category
So,
3 winds
yeah, and along with flooding, because
and extensive flooding.
yeah, because Manila has had a problem with flooding for how many years already. So this storm, coupled with its winds and rain, might actually be a very bad storm for Metro Manila.
Just like to note, I'm just looking at radar here for the Philippines here, and according to the Philippines radar, it looks like Catanduanes Island is getting
Yeah.
some of the first real rain bands from this typhoon here, and it's really incredible. Just to put this typhoon in perspective here, going off the official J2WC forecast from last night, this storm peaked as, so far at least, as the 895 millibar super typhoon we're talking about here. This is the strongest storm, if we go off of millibars alone here, strongest storm pressure-wise since super typhoon Moranti in September 2016. Just to put that in perspective here, this doesn't happen, on the usual Western Pacific typhoon season here. This is a quite remarkable event here. So again, to put this in perspective, the strongest storm since Moranti that Super Typhoon Rolly is right now, again, so far at least, it's peaked as an 895 millibar, Category 5 from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, but I fear that perhaps that could maybe be set again here, or perhaps maybe slightly higher, given the fact how it's still looking so good, right before its close approach or landfall over some of these islands of the Philippines. I'm really concerned here about just how devastating these impacts could be here, just looking at the storm right now. It's really concerning.
A reminder that at 8 p.m, PAGASA issued Signal 4 warnings for Catanduanes and part of Camarines Sur. There was a question about whether there are warnings on Cebu yet. No, there are not. The warnings extend as far south as the northern tip of Leyte, which you can just about see on the screen there, and northern parts of the island of Panay, as well as what are those? I can't quite read it there. The islands north of Palawan there. Calamian, I think.
Calamian, group of islands. Is that what you mean?
Yes, those islands also under
Calamian.
Signal 1. Signal 2 for the whole of Mindoro, Romblon, Masbate, central parts of Samar, northern Samar under signal 3, pretty much the whole Bicol region under signal 3 or 4, Manila, all the areas around there, signal 2, and central Luzon further north there, signal 1 extending at least halfway through Isabela province on the eastern coast and Ilocos Sur on the western coast. If you've got questions for us, please send them in. Here's another one. What will be the forecast for Leyte province? Some rain, not particularly windy, but gusty perhaps.
Probably have moderate to heavy rains with some gusts. At least that's what PAGASA is saying right now.
Yes, indeed. And a few messages of thanks as well. Well, thank you for choosing us, and I hope that we're doing a decent job in providing the best coverage. But right now, this is a very serious situation. We don't put spin on things. We don't hype things. We've been tracking storms like these for nearly 9 years without break, and this is one of the strongest that we've seen in that time. And in terms of affecting land, this is one of the probably one of the worst situations we've seen in terms of the damage potential on this one in that time.
It really just, stresses to people here that if they're not taking this typhoon seriously here, they could be looking at some grave situations here. This is, again, the strongest storm, pressure-wise at least, since Super Typhoon Moranti in September 2016. Just to put that in perspective here, you don't see super typhoons this strong that often in the Western Pacific here. Certainly not every year. So, like Nathan is saying, like everybody else in this call is saying, and can probably attest to, this is a serious situation here we're talking about here, and you still have a little bit of time here to get into a shelter, evacuate here further inland, and while you have that precious time here, please do it here. This is a serious storm here, and if you don't take that action now and you do it, during when the tropical storm force winds start to be felt, I don't know if they're being felt already, but if they're not yet, you still have probably a few hours here to take that action here, and please do it here. This is a serious super typhoon we're talking about here. This isn't, your run-of-the-mill Cat 3, Cat 2 typhoon we're talking about here. This is a Category 5 super typhoon we're talking about.
The estimate right now is that tropical storm force winds are just off the coast of Catanduanes and will probably be felt maybe within minutes, very soon now, until we see the tropical storm force winds move over land. Those are just estimates. They're based on the satellite imagery. Obviously, ground observations will be better. Will give us a better indication of where how extensive those winds are. I don't know if you can get any ground data there, Isaac, from Virac or wherever, about what the wind speeds might be.
Technically it can, but it's gonna glitch out my screen here and probably lag up my voice, so I can't do that on there.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can get some readings on that. If you've got any information for us on the ground ahead of the storm, how people are preparing, any suggestions, recommendations, please send in your messages as well. You may indeed help others, especially when we bring it to air. Paul, any other news right now?
Right now.
Okay.
I'll just inform you when there is, okay?
And back to Ike there as well. That's your place live right now in Laguna. I think he's taken a moment out, but looks very calm there right now, as you'd probably still expect. Storms are very known for having the utter calmness that happens preceding it, and there is a little bit of truth to that theory, because the storm sucks up all of that energy and moisture. generally get very dry patches outside of the storm's influence. You can even see it on this imagery here, west of Luzon. Very dry there by the looks of things, and warm, even by night. So
They say it is the calm before the storm.
well, it certainly is. So if you're wondering about the colours on this imagery, the blacks there, that's around minus 70 degrees Celsius cloud tops, fading into greys and light greys there, that's minus 80s. And when we're talking about cloud top temperatures being minus 80 or below, that's what's being measured by the satellite. The satellite signal reaches the clouds, bounces off. Obviously, the higher the clouds are, the colder they are in the atmosphere. And obviously, it looks down into the eye as well. The warmer temperature it can get inside the eye signals usually a stronger storm. Not always, but mostly. We've also got Ray with us right now. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
I think we've got him there.
He's silent.
Well, we'll speak with Ray shortly if he has any input for us. I think we've also got Strat here.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever anyone is.
So, Strat, you're watching
Hello.
this storm. Oh, there's Ray as well. Let's talk to Ray first because you're over there in the Philippines as well. What's your take on Rolly right now?
Okay, my concern that Rolly is it's still a pretty impressive storm, like a category 5 system, and I'm increasingly worried about the intensity of this typhoon once it gets into landfall, because many people right now, especially on social media, are very anxious in terms of what would be the intensity of the storm once it makes landfall in the Bicol region.
Well, absolutely, and rightly so. I mean, I think it might even be a little bit hopeful to suggest it'll be a borderline Category 5. It might be a clear Category 5 at landfall.
It's still going to be a very significant typhoon. Like, remember, it's going to be much stronger than Quinta several days ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what I want people to understand here. Regardless, whether it makes landfall, the high end Cat 4, low end Cat 5 does not set aside just the serious impacts this super typhoon could cause here. Doesn't set aside that at all here. It's not all about category here. Heck, even tropical storms can cause catastrophic flooding.
Of course.
And parts of the world here too. So just take this storm seriously here. This is, on a kind of on another level here. This is, once you get to when it's high end cat 4 or whatever, it doesn't really again set aside the fact how the damage could still be pretty much catastrophic and severe and life threatening here. So just because you may see this typhoon weaken from high end cat 5 to maybe low end or low end high end cat 4 or low end cat 5, does not mean you need to stop taking this typhoon seriously. This is I cannot say it enough, and I know I sound like a broken record here, but this is a serious super typhoon here, and I really hope people are taking it seriously and listening to their local officials in PAGASA here for just the latest information on this monster typhoon.
And the next update, of course, will be at 11 p.m. We might even stay for that yet. I'm not sure how long we'll be here for. Of course, 3 minutes past 9 right now. Super Typhoon Goni bearing down on the Bicol region of the Philippines. If you've just joined us, estimated winds of 175 miles per hour, which is 280 kilometers per hour, sustained with higher gusts. Estimated pressure of this storm down, it's gone up slightly since yesterday, but it's still very low, 899 millibars. That's the estimate from satellite, and indications right now this evening that the storm may be intensifying again. We haven't confirmed this yet, but rumours of that may be the case, and hopefully we can get some concrete data for you in this hour. I was going to go somewhere else just then, but I've lost my trail, so I'll hand it over to Strat right now.
I think on top of what Isaac is saying as well, something really important to note is that the wind field for the system, typhoon and gale force, has about doubled in the past 12 hours or
Oh
so.
wow.
So even though that's still relatively small compared to normal, we're talking, at most 150 nautical miles, which is closer to 300 kilometers from the center in any direction. That's still substantially larger than what we were talking about last night. Same goes for the typhoon force wind field. That's now up to a little over 100 kilometers. We were looking closer to 50 kilometers last night. So the range of impacts for this system coming on shore is broader now than it was last night, although that was anticipated ahead of time because of expected eyewall replacement cycles.
We're going to do some more satellite estimates now, so stay tuned for that just shortly. I don't know if you want to take some questions whilst we figure that out.
There's going to be a lot of them, but if you have any questions, start your messages Force13 in the chat or at Force13. Lights the message in a bright orange for us, makes it easy to see.
That's on our YouTube stream, and on Facebook you can just send a message anyway, and Paul will probably pick that up for us here.
Okay, so I've actually picked up a question right now. I think Strat, you can answer this. Has the wind field of the storm widened?
Yeah, just to reiterate, it has widened in particular over the past 12 hours because of the hour replacement cycles. It's still smaller than average in size, but we're talking a maximum extent of gale force winds of 300 kilometers or so
Wow.
in the maximum direction. In the southeastern quadrant, the southwestern quadrant, that's going to be smaller than the northwest and northeast quadrant, though.
Early this morning, that was
Typhoon-
only 90 kilometers.
Was it?
Or maybe 100.
Yeah, I mean, the latest updates, was it 110 nautical miles to the greatest extent.
That's
so
doubled, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, instead of looking way further down, it's well over 200 kilometers now at the maximum extent. And that should widen a bit more as well before landfall happens too.
Which is not good news either. What are we thinking about storm surge, how widespread that might be? Considering this storm is rather small, I'm not sure exactly what to think about that.
Well, yesterday reports were saying that they were expecting, up to 2 to 2.5 meters of storm surge. Considering the persistence and the storm strength, that's probably increased a good bit since then. But because the storm is so small in size, it won't be able to rack up as large of a storm surge total as other areas. So I think because of that, and just because some of the areas still aren't the most populated along potential landfall zones, that they're going to be paying attention more towards rainfall and the high winds that could be occurring from this rather than storm surge. Although particularly low-lying areas do have evacuation orders in place, particularly areas that are already under signal 4, and those should be heated.
We've just had a intensity update. Not much change, but it has dropped 1 millibar according to our latest estimates. Now 898 millibars and 175 miles an hour, which again is 280 kilometers per hour sustained. So that's the latest that we're running with right now, that the storm has deepened just 1 millibar, but for all intents and purposes it's maintaining strength, and it's getting closer and closer to a Category 5 landfall at this rate.
Yeah, and someone asked what they're expecting in Calabarzon. I think the easiest way to say that, I'm sure Paul can concur as well, is that's basically right where the center is going to go through after eclipse northern Bicol or Catanduanes. So, I mean, it depends on exactly where you're talking about there, because it isn't a small region. If you're talking, the far southeastern or northwestern or northeastern portions, that could be far different than where the actual core comes on shore, just because the system's quite small. And of course, if you're all the way on the western side of that region, the typhoon will be substantially weaker when it's exiting the Philippines than it will be on the eastern side when it's first making impact.
Remarkable to look at still at this point. Let's see what else we've got here. Just having everything's calm in Laguna. Some cloud coverage there. I'm sure Ike would attest to that. And how about Rizal province?
Rizal province. Let me see.
That is directly east of Manila proper, but it's
Yeah.
not on the east coast either. So they're not going to get, say, the strongest winds from this. That would be, directly on the eastern coast of Luzon and northern Bicol, where the storm's going to be making its first direct impacts. However, if the storm tracks basically where the current forecast from the JTWC is, they are likely to get some typhoon conditions, at least in parts of the region. Of course, when we're talking about these, regional areas or provinces, they are larger in size, so it is important if you're actually in them directly to be listening to the local officials to zone in on your exact location as well.
Yes, indeed. We'll take more questions, of course. What is the current track and what to expect in Calabarzon, especially Laguna? What category are they expecting? And again, well, that's one thing we'll go on to. First of all, we'll just go on to the signal warnings again and just explain what those mean. Signal 2 warnings, that's for wind speeds of... I'm trying to remember that. I can't remember that. Signal 4 is for at least major typhoon conditions, isn't it?
Yes, that's 171
Yeah.
to 220 kilometers per hour for signal 4.
And signal 3?
That's 121 to 170 kilometers per hour.
Okay, so that's basically category 1 and 2 typhoon. And signal 2 is, was it 60 kilometers an hour it starts at?
Yeah, that's 61 to 120 kilometers per hour for signal force 2.
So that's borderline tropical storm status to typhoon status, and signal 1 is just short of storm status, but you could still get some heavy weather and strong gusts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we're talking about, because start of the question was Laguna as well, that area could actually see the center track over it or very close to it right now.
If you're basing JMA, right?
JTWC or JMA right now are very
Yeah.
close to the center tracking over that. If it was 2 days ago, the expectations were that this would be to the south of the center, not receiving as substantial impacts directly. But right now, at least, it wouldn't be surprising to see the storm make a close enough approach that while it's no longer going to be at its peak intensity at that location because it is inland, that you could still see pretty significant typhoon conditions because it is close enough to the eastern portion of the Philippines.
Just going to throw up another graphic here whilst we're on this. I'm getting a little bit cluttered, but just wanted to show this. If we could get it above. Okay, this is the wind speed probability graphic that I was alluding to earlier. The orange that you can see on the screen, that first layer of orange that's over Manila there, that's the 50% threshold for typhoon conditions. So all areas that are under any shade of orange have a more than half chance of getting typhoon winds. And all areas that are in the lighter shade of green, or, well, the middle shade of green there, that's the 10% area. So quite a large population in that 10% zone. I calculated it's about 42 million people in that area that could all receive typhoon conditions in a worst case scenario.
Yeah. And I mean, this, at least for areas that are going to go straight into the center, will go up, precipitously as the center of the system approaches. So by the time, Raleigh is, next to Luzon, you'll probably see, 70, 80, or 90% for a lot of those areas. That actually goes to a question I've seen in both the Facebook and the YouTube chat, though, about whether or not signal 3 or 4 warnings are possible for Metro Manila in relation to the system.
Yeah.
Signal 3, not sure about 4.
Signal 3 is more than likely, but signal number 4,
I think the best way to say it is that if Manila was on the opposite side of the Philippines of Luzon, so if it was on the east coast rather than the west coast, it would almost certainly be under
yeah.
signal 4.
It's probably a good reason that Manila's on the western coast, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
By the way, we've got an update on the YouTube chat in the stream. Camarines, they're from Camarines Norte. The winds are actually picking up there right now.
Yeah, that's. I'm not surprised by that. You can see the higher clouds starting to move over there, so tropical storm force winds won't be far away at all.
Yeah, and for a lot of people I've seen asking questions more about Leyte and the Visayas regions and Cebu further south, even though the actual core and the most adverse conditions are going to remain well to the north, that doesn't necessarily mean that outer bands, which you can kind of see right now in the satellite imagery, won't reach down further south and cause some impacts or inclement conditions, although it obviously won't be nearly as severe as anything that we're going to see in the northern Philippines as the storm comes onshore.
Alright, I'm just taking a very short break from my desk here. For the time being, shall we go to Isaac's imagery?
Yeah, I'd like to note over here on radar, at least in this latest frame, the southern eyewall being visible there. That little kind of U shape right there, that's the eyewall you're seeing on radar right there, coming in the range here. This radar is out of, I believe, Tacloban or near Tacloban City, the Philippines here. And the radar keeps going in and out here, but you can see the eyewall there, and perhaps the concentric eyewall to the south of that as well. See the little kind of band right there? That's what we call it, a concentric eyewall there. So that could mean either storm is still kind of in the process of undergoing its eyewall replacement cycle, or perhaps trying to undergo another one here. But regardless, you could still see that little inner eyewall right there, the little U shape right there. That's where we're going to see those Cat 5 super typhoon winds there, and that unfortunately is going to be heading for land here. And I really hope people are preparing for this super typhoon here. This is a significant typhoon, like I said. This is the strongest typhoon in the area pressure-wise alone here since Super Typhoon Moranti in 2016 here in September, to put this in perspective here. So you usually don't see a storm of this magnitude here this often in Western Pacific, and it's just really dangerous situation here. We originally thought this was going to be kind of a weakening, maybe Cat 4 typhoon at this time, but still by our estimates and by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's estimates, still a potent and strong Category 5 equivalent super typhoon. Strat?
Yeah, and I mean, that really goes to the conversation, just simple fact that the expectations for this have shifted so drastically just in the past 5 days. 5 days ago when we were more focused on Zeta and the Atlantic Basin, all indications back then at least were that we were going to see, forming tropical storm at most passing through maybe the Visayas region of the Philippines. Obviously, that's been completely shattered, and we saw this quickly intensify to a typhoon. But even at that point, it was hard pressed to see this getting even to super typhoon status, let alone the upper echelons of what it did yesterday. And even so, back then, there was anticipation that this would weaken more substantially before coming on shore. Unfortunately, because it's coming onshore more directly now in Bicol, it isn't going to have as much time to say clip the region, has some land interaction, disrupt it more before it comes onshore in Luzon. That's where you see the odds of a stronger landfall increase. And despite that, we're still at 175 miles an hour or so right now, which is just shy of 290 kilometers per hour. So it's still, even despite all that, an extraordinarily powerful system right now, too.
Let's just get a position estimate on this storm right now. I'm trying very hard to try and get that here. Just to measure how far it is, the eye at least, from land, and indeed get an actual coordinate for you all. Just taking a look here as of 20 minutes ago. Oh, now this is interesting. Just one frame so far, but it looks like the eye might be clouding up. In any case, we'll probably find out more later. Currently 14.1 degrees north, 126.1 degrees east. That is 120 miles from the closest point of land on Catanduanes. That is about, what's that in kilometers? About 200 kilometers, I believe. And then from places like Manila, 347 miles still. and it current. Let me see if I can try and get the current movement. Just a little estimate on that. Got to do a lot of clicking to get there, unfortunately. So in 1 hour there, it moved 18 miles west-southwest from 7 to 8 p.m.
Makes sense with the general trend we're seeing right now. There have been some wobbles with the eye because of the eyewall replacement cycles and just oscillations when you have a storm as powerful as this, but the trend is still pretty definitively to the west-southwest. If you don't want more of Bicol to see more direct impacts, you'd want a quicker turn to due west at a sooner time.
So if we're extrapolating that movement out, I've calculated here that landfall would be on southern Catanduanes in 7.5 hours from 8 p.m. So that would be 3:30 in the morning.
That's not good. We're talking about early morning hours where it's very dark and you cannot see anything.
I think that really goes to serve the point, though, that we are talking evening time here right now, already at 9:21 p.m. local time for the Philippines. Any preparations, especially those in Bicol or Catanduanes, should already be complete right now, and any evacuation orders should have already been taken. The time for those extra last-second preparations is almost gone, or is already gone, as conditions will rapidly deteriorate. And for those in Luzon, you have a bit more time, but when you go to sleep, your time to finish your preparations will also be just about done, if not slightly before that. So, everyone should really be watching this and then deciding, if I'm in the path of this, my final preparations need to be completed within the next couple hours at most.
The visible appearance on the satellite, the infrared, astounding amount of yellow that I don't think we've seen for a few years, particularly in this area. Northern and eastern side particularly are heading up towards -86, maybe -88 degrees.
I think we were more hopeful last night after we went off the air at around 12 p.m. local time for the Philippines, when that eyewall replacement cycle dissipated the whole ring of -80s, that we could see some more serious weakening. But unfortunately, it just really hasn't ended up occurring at all.
Yeah, I went to bed, seeing a really weakening storm here. Cloud tops are a lot warmer than they were originally, and then of course when I wake up, see a still continuing at least to try and maintain its intensity here storm, and then those 80-degree Celsius cloud tops bounce back up quickly here. It's just truly incredible to see just how the storm's been doing the past 3 hours, and I'm sure the storm's going to be studied for years to come here. It's just truly incredible. And like you said, Strat, like Nathan said, and once everybody in this call has said, just please take this typhoon seriously here. If it does make landfall at night, like we're forecasting, it's going to be a really scary night for a lot of you that haven't taken this typhoon seriously here. It's going to be a really scary night for you, and I really hope and wish the best for you, because this could be a devastating typhoon here. Regardless, Strat said, like I've said, and other people have said, regardless if it makes a high in Cat 4 or maybe a low in Cat 5 at landfall, does not set aside the dangerous and life-threatening conditions this typhoon can give to you guys.
I agree.
So imagery a while ago was suggesting, you can see it there now on the bottom left-hand side. So what's happened there? It's just another wobble. It's not the eye caving in. It's still well and truly there, and let's not forget that it could be a trick of the satellite, which isn't positioned absolutely directly over this storm, given that it's only got a 12 or 13 mile wide eye. It could be the case that the satellite's not seeing it properly, but that eye is definitely still there and still strong.
An update on the ATCM fix from 12Z has come in. Winds has stayed at 155 knots, but interestingly the pressure has come up 4 millibars to 904 4.
So that's their
Still a very
estimate.
powerful storm.
I'm trying to remember the comparisons, the default numbers, what that translates to. I think the default number is 907 for that intensity.
Yes, I mean they're taking in some manual adjustments for sure now, at least. But I mean, even so, the pressure differences at this minute level when we're talking a, major Category 5 super typhoon that even could make landfall at Catanduanes if it doesn't take a more immediate route towards the west and try to clip northern Bicol as the original forecast. We could be seeing some, much more significant typhoon impacts coming on shore a bit sooner than we would have otherwise expected if that ends up occurring.
So we're staying on the air here until the 11 p.m. advisory from PAGASA. Then we'll be going off for a little while. We have a 24/7 stream that shows the latest satellite imagery, all automated there as well on our channel. This stream will direct you there after we finish. And then we'll be live again to cover the storm's landfall whenever that might be. I projected 3:30 earlier on that satellite imagery. I think that's actually 4:30. Realistically, we're looking at landfall. We're talking about those kinds of hours between, say, 4 a.m. and maybe towards 7, 8 a.m. So we'll definitely be live to cover that whenever that is. I guess the best advice is to check our channel often to see if we schedule another live stream. As soon as we know, you'll know.
Oh, okay. So, I have noticed in the YouTube stream chat, newcomers have been asking if it is possible that PAGASA might raise signal number 5 in some places. So, if you would mind, I will repeat my answer. So, signal number 5 as of now is not likely because, as you can see in the 8 p.m. PAGASA update, they are still putting it at around 215 kilometers per hour, which is 5 kilometers per hour shy of the requirement to be upgraded to Super Typhoon.
I didn't know it was that close. Why
Yeah,
are they
it is
holding
that
back?
close. Exactly. See, you now understand my point. It's literally just 5 kilometers per hour away from the requirement. So, sorry for cutting you, but I'll just answer the question. So, going back to the signal number 5 possibility, if the storm will not be upgraded to Super Typhoon category in PAGASA scale, then most likely we won't see a signal number 5 because again, the signal number 5 TCWS signal and the Super Typhoon category in PAGASA scale share the same requirement at around, the storm has to be at around 220 kilometers per hour maximum sustained winds. 10 minutes, by the way. Okay, so there.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the best answers you get for it. But, regardless of whether or not Signal 5 ends up coming to place, even if it doesn't, Signal 3 and 4, anyone in those areas should be taking this extraordinarily seriously. Just because there isn't a Signal 5, and those are extremely rare in the first place, doesn't mean that anyone should be taking the slightest less caution with this system.
I hope that's the case.
Very rare.
I hope that's the case because someone needs to do a case study on this. Because in storms in the past, we've noticed there's been a big drop-off in interest as soon as a storm loses Category 5 intensity, and that's the last thing you want to see because it's still 155 miles an hour, whatever it is at that point. This is still a Category 5, but even when it goes down to Category 4 and 3, it's still going to be a potential for major and widespread devastation.
So just to back up the thing that Strat just said, actually only one typhoon utilized the TCWS number 5. Only one typhoon in its existence. That was Haima.
And this is much stronger than Haima, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So if PAGASA had given Jaime the honors to have a signal number 5, how come Rolly's not getting it when it clearly is a super typhoon? But
Wow.
that is my opinion. I'm not like taking the blame on them like that. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's mine as well. I certainly think there should be the highest level of warning for those areas right now, because it's becoming quite clear that this storm is not going to weaken much before it strikes land. The eye's wobbling a bit there on that imagery, Isaac. Are you seeing anything to suggest that it might be about to drop off, or is it going to continue?
Well, looking at the latest satellite trends that you can see in the last few frames, they're really well pronounced. Keep in mind these white splotches you see on the satellite imagery right here are negative 80 degrees Celsius cloud tops or cooler here. You're looking at right now. It goes off the scale here to give you
Yep.
kind of a reference of what's happening here. And you see those, triquetra wobbles that happen near the end of the loop there. That's a telltale sign of an eyewall replacement cycle there happening, and that's good and bad.
Okay.
Good because that of course weakens the storm slightly here, but bad of course because if it completes it, it'll increase the range of tropical storm force and typhoon force winds here, and help the storm maintain its intensity more. So kind of a double-edged sword we're looking at here, and again, still a serious storm regardless what category it makes landfall at.
So is this now a third eyewall replacement cycle?
I believe so. I think it had a merger eyewall replacement cycle. I think nearly 2 days ago, and it had this one. I had another one actually overnight, I think, and I think it's trying to get going again because I'm assuming the other one failed and it's trying to complete it for real this time. And radar, let me go back to radar here. I know it's cut off on the northern side here, or is that? There it is. But you can see what I mean here. The eyewall replacement cycle there. You can
There we
see.
go.
There you go. You can see the outer eyewall here, right there. Hopefully you can see it there, that little outer eyewall, and you can see the strong inner eyewall there. And of course, this is cut off to the north, to further into the north here because of the radar range here, unfortunately. But you can still see that inner eyewall that has, of course, those Category 5-4 super typhoon winds, and you can see that outer eyewall still present on radar.
So this remains still a very powerful Category 5 storm, which isn't weakening just yet. Eyewall replacement cycles, yes, but no indication on the satellite that it is weakening at least any more than the odd 5 mile an hour here and there. Still
But-
easily a Category 5 storm.
Very bad news.
Yeah, and even so, if let's say this eyewall replacement cycle tries to take a bit more of a toll on it before it makes landfall, and you see the eye close up, and this thing, drops slightly below Category 5 status, or even tries to go below super typhoon status, which is hard pressed to see happen in such a short time frame, considering it takes a while for winds to catch up to satellite appearance. It's still very important to call out to everyone watching that such a scenario would not make the storm any less dangerous or threatening to life and property to those in harm's way. I know a lot of media coverage is focused a lot on the wind speeds, and a lot of people either discount the storm if it isn't a typhoon or discount it if it's not a super typhoon.
Yes.
But this will still be extraordinarily life-threatening to where it comes on shore regardless.
Is Goni the strongest typhoon to ever hit Metro Manila? Well, we don't know yet because it hasn't happened, but it's one of the bigger threats that we've seen in recent years.
It will if the track persists that it will directly hit Manila. But as of now, most of the tracks are going more south than what they did on their tracks hours ago.
What we can still say is fortunate for Manila, at least, is their geography does give significant protection to the people living there compared to the other side of Luzon. The system's obviously going to be over land and over much more mountainous terrain, and weaken substantially from when it makes landfall, or even right now, to when it actually crosses over Manila. But it isn't impossible to still see it, say, have winds of at least 160 kilometers plus per hour, 1 minute sustained, by the time it reaches Metro Manila.
And let's not forget off the east coast of Luzon there, which is pretty much where this storm is. This is the statistically the area that gets the most tropical cyclones in the world. But even for those very high standards, this is an extremely powerful storm. Maybe not it's rivaling Angela's intensity, for those that remember Angela, which struck almost to this day 25 years ago. I think it was November the 1st or 2nd or both that Angela struck, a little bit further north than what this storm's going to do by the looks of it now at this point.
Yeah, that storm peaked. I know for a fact it peaked on the 1st. I don't know what time it made landfall at, but I know for a fact it peaked on the 1st of 1995.
Again, looking at Isaac's imagery there too.
Yeah, I would also want to, put this in perspective. Say, this eyewall patient cycle the storm is currently going under. Just say hypothetically here, it doesn't complete here and it fails, and it continues to weaken it here. And say the storm makes landfall as a low end 150 mile an hour, or which is 150 miles an hour to be equivalent to about 241 kilometers an hour. Say this makes landfall at that intensity, still looking at a storm of similar magnitude to Hurricane Charlie. And I know it's a different basin, but Hurricane Charlie of 2004 here in terms of the damage that you could kind of see with the storm Blake's magnitude. Just because it may not be a Cat 5 at landfall, like Strat, Nathan, and all of us have been saying, does not mean you need to stop taking this typhoon seriously here. Like with Charlie, they saw really devastating impacts. That's that's a completely different storm, completely different basin, I know. But that storm had 150 mile an hour winds at landfall, which of course is not a Category 5, and still they got life-threatening and near catastrophic damage over there.
Latest imagery looks, I can't say anything other than interesting. Rapid scan right now. What's your imagery up to there, Isaac?
I'm gonna take a look here. Hold on, let me wait for it. 13 UTC.
1305. I've got 1319 here, and it looks very interesting. The eastern... looks like there's starting to be a bit of a mismatch. Definitely signs of eyewall replacement.
I want to note with this satellite imagery here, it's 10-minute increments here. Himawari does not go up to 15-minute increments unlike MTSat 1IR did. So the imagery, I don't know why it's in the 5s, but this is actually 13 UTC, not 1305 UTC.
Oh, right. But the latest I'm looking at is maybe it's starting that weakening trend now, but it's still got a long way to go until even it weakens from Category 5 to Category 4, because Category 5 starts at 160 miles per hour. This is at least 175.
And even so, takes a while for sometimes, when appearances really change quickly for the winds to actually draw down a bit to match that too.
Yeah, you don't just see 180, 175 mile an hour Cat 5 just all of a sudden in the span of like an hour or two go to Cat 4 with 150 mile an hour winds there. It doesn't work like that. It takes time for those winds to lower and gradually decrease in intensity here.
That's what models are calling for today, though. They're calling for this storm to weaken ridiculously quickly. I mean, we welcome it if that happens, but it's definitely not realistic.
Yeah, usually with storms like this, it takes time for those winds to catch up to satellite appearance. Like I said, say this goes from 175 to Cat 4 in like an hour or two. Looks wise, does not mean you need to stop taking this typhoon seriously here. And like I said, it takes time for those winds to kind of catch up to that. So just still storm need to be taken seriously here. I know on the satellite imagery here, it looks like the eye is getting worse here in terms of clarity, but you can see those cloud tops there in the last two frames. Still at least negative 80 degrees Celsius and higher in some spots too.
I mean, you can't fault those cloud tops at all. It's amongst the best possible, really. You've not only got a ring of minus 80 degrees, it's more than that. You've probably got a full ring of minus 82 at least, nearly a full ring of minus 84, half a ring of minus 86. If that wrapped around fully which it shouldn't at this point. But if it did and it wrapped around fully and there was a 12-degree eye, then you've got a 200-mile-an-hour storm.
Yeah. And keep up this color scale on this imagery band, at least the rainbow band. It peaks out at negative 8 degrees Celsius. This is off the scale we're talking about right now. And usually you would see this for, a sheared, high, cold cloud top tropical storm, a weak typhoon here, and we're talking about a Category 5 typhoon right now. So it's a completely different ballpark here. Just incredible.
So this storm will be striking in the early hours by the looks of things, as we've been saying for quite a while on our stream here. If you've got any comments or questions for us, we'll do our best, but given the flow of traffic right now, it might be difficult. Start your message with Force 13 all in text if you're watching us on our YouTube page, and you can send the messages through to Facebook as well, and one of our Philippine team members will pick that one up. Paul's still here. Anything that you'd like to add at this point?
So with the current situation going on now, I think it's really best, in my personal opinion, I think it's really best that PAGASA now upgrade the storm.
It's just, I don't know what to say about that. They've got it so low compared to what other agencies are saying. It's got to be.
I saw a question come in real quick that's probably good to go over because, I've seen it actually a lot during the stream. People are asking if it's possible to see Signal 4 in Laguna in association with the typhoon. I know there's always a lot of new people coming in and out. The simplest answers,
Unlikely.
based on their location, not particularly likely.
Alright, let's put it this way. Anywhere that's not in Bicol will probably not get Signal 4.
Yes, let's put it that way.
It's still quite possible that they could easily get
Yes.
Signal 3, though.
Well, yes. And
You know.
don't forget they'll be updating again in just over an hour's time. We'll be there for that. And then we'll be wrapping up for the night, but we'll be back first thing, well, whenever the storm's making landfall, which could be before first thing in the morning. But no doubt we'll be here.
Yeah, and, even so, all those areas that are ending up, say, under Signal 3 instead of Signal 4, it is possible for the actual center of the system to track pretty close or over some of those areas, and everyone there should be taking, every precaution and instructions from their local official ahead of the approach of the system. We're in a fortunate situation where the actual center is very small. Typhoon winds extend at most right now about 35 nautical miles, so we're looking, around 60 kilometers for the widest extent. But even so, damaging winds, rainfall, storm surge, all those impacts are going to be much more spread out in association with this system.
Oh yeah, and that would also make sense, especially with the even though the area of typhoon force winds is going to be smaller, the areas that it's typhoon force winds, the damage be much more severe.
And that's the voice of Euxinator there as well. Welcome aboard. You're also watching this storm from Florida. And maybe at some point we'll get to mention Invest 96L, which could be headed your way.
Yeah, it wouldn't be heading directly to my area. It'd be south of my area, but yeah.
If you look at the GFS model, you might change your mind. But that's another... So we've got a few events going on around the world. There's the Atlantic system. That could be another named storm to add to that ridiculous list for this year. It would be number 28.
Yeah, but that's also incredible, and some of the models are going crazy about this storm already here too. So that's another thing to watch here, and another thing to put on to this crazy year we've had.
Unfortunately, we can't dedicate much time to that at all because Goni, a much bigger system and a much more immediate system, is about to strike the coast of the Philippines. The main core of the storm, the very high cloud tops, looks like they're just about to reach the tip of Catanduanes there on the eastern coast. The eye of the storm getting closer at every turn. Wobbling, of course, but let's just get a very latest estimate on how close it is now. As of 19 minutes past the hour, this storm was located 109 miles from land, so that's 175 kilometers.
And what's our movement speed in the last hour or so, since we are close to 2 hours since we started the stream as well?
I have
know the
no
last-
idea.
The last full
PAGASA
update was saying 13 knots, the movement speed, so around 20 or so kilometers an hour.
PAGASA in their 8 p.m. update has put it at around 20 kilometers per hour, moving west-southwestward.
Alright, in the last hour it moved 17 miles.
Ooh. That's quite rapid.
Oh,
Good.
17 miles per hour then.
Yeah, I mean, that's closer to 30 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, if you extrapolate that, the movement that it's done in the last hour, and you know, always be cautious about extrapolations because it never goes that way. But if we were to extrapolate it right now, the track would take it just a few miles south of Catanduanes now, actually not making landfall, and then moving into Albay, I believe. In, must be talking about 9 hours there.
I mean, there is some expectation right now, at least, that we'll see very shortly a more direct turn back to due west rather than a continuation west-south.
Well, that's what the JTWC are betting on, but the way it's going here, it's already going further south than expected. It's just about reached the same latitude as the northern tip of Catanduanes there. And you know, when it's parallel with that, then, and it's still sinking, chances are really decreasing that it will go north of that.
Yeah, and that's not going to be good, especially for Manila, because Manila is at the moment the JTWC still has Manila at ground zero for the eyewall.
In the very short term, you know, there's just the change in expectations despite the storm being far stronger. You know, typically stronger systems are better able to fight back against atmospheric forces, and, you know, for example, that would make you assume that this system would go further north instead than old expectations. But despite that, we've seen a constant and very substantial southward shift in track expectations over the past 2 days. You know, 2 days ago we were looking at central Luzon for a landfall. Right now, Catanduanes are potentially south of that if the trend doesn't change very quickly. Could be the area that ends up receiving the first landfall from the system. So a very different situation unfolding even now than was expected 12 to 24 hours ago.
Some questions from earlier. How can Raleigh be compared with October 2006 same named Milenio by the Philippines?
I think it's going to be stronger than that storm, based on the winds that this storm currently has.
That one was strong. Borderline Category 5, I think, wasn't it?
It was
Highest
when
wind speed recorded at Milenio was 230 kilometers per hour.
So, mid-range Category 4.
Yeah, Category 4 typhoon, yeah.
How
Someone
long-
asked an interesting... Oh,
How
I'm
long
sorry.
will this last? Since it's slowing down, how many hours till it gets out of a town or region? I'm not sure I understand the end of that question, but as we said just before, potentially 9 hours till landfall if it misses Catanduanes, or maybe 7 hours if it were to hit directly.
And I think they're asking how long it'll take before it clears out of an area as well. You know, you're
Oh,
really
okay,
looking at a
yes.
situation
I'm
where
sorry, yeah, I get that now.
from right now, by 24 hours from now, it should already be in the South China Sea. So if it
More or less.
takes the track expectation from several hours ago, if it deviates further to the south, it might be, you know, still barely over a portion of the Philippines, but still about 24 hours from now, a little bit over that, you'll be seeing the system enter the South China Sea. At most, it'll take 30 to 36 hours for that to happen.
At that point, it will definitely be going due west.
And then back into Vietnam as well for more rainfall for areas that got absolutely doused by the past two systems. I saw a question that's important to go over as well, just because this has implications for the Philippines in a couple days too. They're saying, is the area of high pressure to the north going to be moving out? What looks like it's going to happen, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't seen the latest computer model run, is that you're going to see an initial move out of it, but another area of high pressure is going to set in very strong and then potentially steer the very disorganized Atsani, whatever it organizes into at that point, potentially to the southwest towards the Philippines at that point after slowing down and getting pushed to the southwest by that high pressure system. So down the line in the middle and later next week, that's another threat for the Philippines.
Yeah, right now it's being pushed south by high pressure in front of that trough that's to its northeast. So north of there you can see a lot of clear skies. That's high pressure there, centered. It's quite a broad high pressure, but the strongest part of it is over Japan right now at 1027 millibars. But over China as well, you've still got high 1010s, 1020s, and that's pushing the storm south. For instance, the northern tip of Luzon is at a pressure of 1014, and you see how close that is to the center of Goni. Very high pressure over there, and that's why it's being forced further south. And the way it's going, it looks like it's going to be south just for the Philippines, and then it could move a little bit north again when it enters the South China Sea. As for Atsani, which is behind it, it's the high pressure is going to double down. There's a new one coming off the coast of China when we're looking there, maybe Wednesday or Tuesday, and that will push Atsani south. It was trying to recurve, but then it gets shunted towards the south, and that could be another typhoon landfall in Luzon next Thursday, and that's a high pressure in the 1020s again. And then after that there's a weakness, but the next high pressure comes in by the time the next storm comes through. That's that area of interest is on the far right of your image, and that's going to move into the South China Sea as well. They're all following each other, and then this is long range GFS, but when you're talking towards mid-November, a lower latitude storm moving through Leyte, the central Visayas region, weak, but intensifying in the South China Sea, which would be just awful for Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We've just seen, despite of extreme lack of activity early in the season, we're heading at what looks to be an end storm total more average. But I really think
I always got the
storms
concerned feeling, Strat, that the Western Pacific was so quiet for so much of the season. It's just going to be one of these that has a crazy end. And then I saw the models, the extreme ultra long range models that were not always sure about, to say the least. And that was saying 3 weeks ago that the end of October, beginning of November would be mad.
I mean, I think it really goes to serve the point that everyone should remember that it only takes one system, one storm, to make an entire year for a place. So even if you've seen relatively low activity compared to normal, that can change at any instant. And that's unfortunately for the Philippines what we're seeing right now with Raleigh's approach to landfall in the next several hours. And hopefully Atsani remains weaker than currently expected. It does look pretty abysmal right now, and it is weaker than it was 2 days ago still. But right now, at least, we're on the verge of seeing a super typhoon landfall in the Philippines.
If we pan this, are we able to pan this image? Not easily. Let me just see if I can do this manually, type in some numbers, and hopefully it'll change. Yes, you can see further east now on this particular perspective. That is Atsani on the right hand side of the image. That looks appalling. It's been shredded to bits by wind shear from the obviously much stronger Goni.
That's still forecast to reach typhoon intensity too,
It is,
as it
yeah.
perhaps nears the Philippines as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is Atsani's moving quicker to the west-southwest right now. It's still going to be moving quicker to the west into the South China Sea and then into Vietnam. Atsani, comparatively, is moving slower and to the west, northwest, and northwest right now. So that separation that it's going to have is going to leave it in a spot to where when it starts to get pushed southwest and west-southwest by the new area of high pressure, that it's still going to be in favorable enough conditions with Goni gone that it'll be able to try to organize and intensify. I saw a question as well about Batangas, which is a bit south of Manila, about what impacts you expect there. Yeah.
More or less, TCWS signal number 2 or 3 is possible.
Yeah, rainfall-wise, they're expecting increased amounts compared to yesterday. Still important to keep in mind this is a small storm, so the worst impacts will be over a relatively thin area. But they could see there up to 200 to 300 millimeters of rainfall at a more regional level, localized higher amounts, of course.
Oh no.
Actually.
New rapid scan imagery showing that the eye is coming out again. I think Isaac can show us that too.
What has happened?
No, don't do that.
What
Not you,
happened?
Nathan. The storm. Yeah, I could definitely see it in the last few frames. The eye is getting more clear there. You see, in the beginning of the frame there, the kind of lighter blue, kind of aqua color there in the eye, and then later on, as time progresses, you see kind of like a deep navy blue, and then I think almost a pink there. You might see in one little pixel there of the eye, so that's not a good sign at all. That's an indication that the eyewall replacement cycle may be indeed succeeding here and nearing completion right now, which would be, of course, not good news at all for the Philippines here.
By the way, Nathan, can I make a clarification very quickly?
Absolutely.
So, there has been comments in the YouTube chat stream that saying that Goni is not yet a typhoon. So I'll make it clear. JTWC has it at the super typhoon level right now. Meanwhile, PAGASA hasn't. So I'm just gonna repeat this now. JTWC uses 1 minute sustained winds. So basically, we can expect that the readings of JTWC will be more at the higher level than the 10-minute sustained wind measurement that PAGASA and JMA uses. I hope that clarifies the confusion.
I mean, super typhoon status starts at 240 kilometers per hour. This is at least 280
In JTWC.
in 1 minute sustained winds. Yeah.
Yeah. And new questions coming about certain locations as well. Of course, there's always new people flooding in and out. Another question about Laguna, if you want to pick that up real quick, Paul.
So, what was the question?
About Laguna, what kind of general impacts they're going to say there? Someone asked if it's going to be safe there. I mean, considering typhoon impacts are possible, I wouldn't quite call it safe.
Yeah. So basically, when you look at PAGASA's track right now, along with GTWC's and JMA's, they're already going, they're already agreeing on a little bit closer to Laguna. So probably you might get signal number 2 to signal number 3 there. With, like Strat said, winds, devastating winds, devastating rain. So probably at low-lying areas there, you might get flooded. Yeah.
I would think so. Typhoon conditions more likely than not as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're kind of in a silver lining scenario where the storm's small size means that those harshest conditions, those typhoon-sustained winds, and especially those super typhoon-sustained winds, are going to be confined to a relatively small area. We're talking the harshest winds are going to be within, 30 kilometers or so of the exact center. But regardless of that, damaging winds are still going to be extending upwards of 200 plus kilometers from the center as the storm comes on shore, particularly on the northern half. The southern side is going to have a smaller wind field. So even if this storm comes down and, say, makes landfall in southern Catanduanes and then moves through central Bicol and very southern areas of Luzon, for example, Manila will still see gale force sustained winds,
Yeah.
and could, if the wind field expands a bit before making landfall, get near typhoon sustained winds in such a scenario. Right now, at least, the track forecast still overall would call for them, along with Laguna and some of the other areas that we've been mentioning in south central Luzon, to receive typhoon conditions. So everyone there that's watching this should be rapidly finishing any preparations. And we went over this a bit earlier, but this is going to potentially make landfall in the very early hours of the morning and start moving through more land areas during the early morning. So by the time you wake up, it's highly possible that your window to prepare is already well over, and stronger impacts that are making it unsafe to continue preparations or go outdoors will already be occurring.
And like you said there, Strat, I mean, this is a compact system we're talking about here. This isn't, a large, huge typhoon we're talking about here. This is a relatively compact system, and that's probably one of the main reasons why this typhoon has been able to intensify as much as it did. It's because of its compact size. Usually with smaller typhoons, it takes them a lot less, time to rapidly intensify here, and get going here. And we easily saw that with this typhoon here, Super Typhoon Goni. If we would have like a bigger typhoon, it'll take a little bit longer for it to intensify, up to even close to the same magnitude that Goni is right now. So just keep in mind, this is a fairly compact system, but that doesn't mean you need to stop taking this, typhoon seriously here. Just because, it's not a large typhoon does not mean it can't give you guys life-threatening and deadly impacts.
Looks big enough from where I'm sitting now.
By the
Yeah.
way, we had a question. Maybe for the newcomers, we'll just repeat the answer for this question, but here it is anyway. Is there a possibility for the storm to weaken at landfall? Absolutely. Yeah.
Possibility for it to weaken before landfall, but those chances are starting to fade, believe it or not, because it looks like it's intensifying again. I'm sorry to break that news, but that's how it appears on the rapid scan right now. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions. We're sticking with our intensity that we started at 2 hours ago. And if you have just joined us, this is Force 13 Live. It's 2 minutes past 10 in the Philippines, and the 11 p.m. advisory will be out at the end of this hour, and that's when we'll be wrapping up our coverage tonight. But we will be back on the air as soon as we think this storm is going to make landfall imminently to run landfall coverage. So who knows what time in the morning that will be, but we'll be there, don't worry about that. Whether it's 4, 5, 6 in the morning, I'm not sure just yet, but any of those possibilities are on the table. And we'll find out whether those signal 4 warnings have extended, or indeed whether there might be signal 5 warnings.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, at least for landfall, the timing's going to matter a bit on where exactly it does come on shore. If this thing dodges Catanduanes, barely, a landfall will be pushed off by another couple hours, especially if it tries to somehow do that to the north, although that isn't particularly likely. If this tries to make landfall in Catanduanes instead, then we're talking about a landfall initially there a couple hours before we see a landfall in Bicol in that scenario.
Is Typhoon Goni similar to Hurricane Andrew? Stronger than
terms of
Hurricane
size.
Andrew.
Yeah,
Maybe
stronger.
in terms of size, but I don't think in terms of intensity at this point.
What are the chances of the typhoon changing its track before it hits landmass and as it traverses through it? Time's running out for it to change track before striking landmass. Catanduanes is now underneath the minus 70 degree cloud tops and soon to be the minus 80 degree cloud tops. Things are going to get very real there shortly if they aren't already. And I imagine in this storm, given its small size, the conditions will escalate very quickly indeed.
I mean, unfortunately, there's no way really around that. If there was going to be any track deviation right now from the expectations, it would be expected to be a bit to the south again of what we're seeing prior. So that would mean instead of right now, at least barely clipping the northern coast of Catanduanes or moving a bit more into it, trying to make landfall more in the southern portion of the island or potentially trying to dodge it. Of course, there is still the possibility of a last-second deviation to the north, which would spare Catanduanes from the worst impacts of the system, but that sadly looks to be decreasing in odds right now quite a bit.
It still actually looks like it's moving southwest,
Mhm.
more than the west movement that has been forecasted.
Yeah,
When you
and
look at the satellite loop.
yeah, and I think probably one of the stories with this storm is going to be how uh, people almost caught off guard and having to prepare last second, because we're talking about a system that, you know, earlier this week when we were doing live streams about Hurricane Zeta hitting the United States and Molave moving into the Vietnam area, was expected to be maybe a tropical storm or forming as it moved into the Visayas region. We're seeing a storm move in just a little bit north of the Visayas region into Bicol now, but instead of that, we've seen this be a Category 5 super typhoon for over 36 hours consecutively now, and over 175 miles an hour sustained for at least 24 hours straight. So expectations, that officials and everyone was using were really shattered and continue to be. The unfortunate thing from that means that because that happened within a shorter window to landfall, that resource deployment, public messaging and stuff was a bit more delayed because the initial message wasn't really expecting this to occur.
Questions about rainfall expectations. We're still looking at least 300 millimeters near the center of the storm, probably more by this point. And as we'll see if we get more rain info in a moment, but also we had a question about, it's already slipped my mind actually. There was another question about whether it could spawn tornadoes.
Strat, I think Strat can answer that.
I mean, while tropical cyclones can technically spawn tornadoes, all of them can technically, you're talking about a region for the world that wouldn't be particularly conducive for such an event to occur. So that's why you don't hear us talking too much about, tornado outbreaks in general, about Western Pacific typhoons, when we'd be much more concerned about, let's say, for a landfall in the Carolinas in the United States, or even in Louisiana, for example, like we saw with Zeta.
Well, let's just remind ourselves that with winds of maybe 180 miles an hour, at least 175, this is a 200-mile wide tornado.
Yeah,
in effect.
I mean that's definitely the way to put it. To be fair, I guess a lot of times people, they're focusing on severe weather. We'll talk about that, but in reality, if you have a storm that's 175 mile an hour sustained winds, that is just, in essence, a large tornado in itself. If you want to use terminology.
I believe we're also joined on the line by Tim. Are you there?
I am Nathan. Thanks for having me in studio. Currently at work, but I wanted to chip in here for a couple of minutes on the analysis and commentary that we've been given. Obviously, Goni is a very dangerous system. I believe last check still is stage 7 on the CDPS.
Stage 7
to put
now,
that
okay.
Yeah, I think Devin's maintained it as a stage 7 for the last 2 days. To put that in perspective, I know some of the viewers are asking, is it similar to Hurricane Andrew? In terms of CDPS, it is.
Or worse.
Or worse, yeah, depending. But for some of the viewers that are wondering about the signal warnings that aren't familiar with PAGASA's setup, I did a little bit of research on them. Your signal 2 warnings is basically PAGASA's equivalent of a tropical storm warning. Signal 3 is basically your hurricane warning, and then I know we've had the signal 4s. That is basically PAGASA's equivalent of saying anticipate category 2 to category 3 conditions in and around those signal 4 warning areas. And if we go above 4 and we get those signal 5s, then you're talking basically category 3 higher conditions. Just to put it in perspective for those that are not familiar with the PAGASA signal warning system.
Signal 4 and 5, you'll want to get out of those areas if possible.
Absolutely. Your signal 4s over here in the U.S. is equivalent to the National Weather Service issuing an extreme wind warning, which we've had those happen over here in the States, and they're not something to take lightly. We had them during Laura, and we saw the damage that it caused. So yeah, for anybody in Luzon, Central Visayas, I know Strat's been saying it, and I've been saying it to our members in our public Discord. You need to get your preparations done because you're running out of time very quickly.
You can indeed join the conversation on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13, for live chat with anyone who turns up, basically. And that's always online when we're off the air. We'll be finishing at the end of this hour for the time being. Of course, we'll be back when the storm is pretty much making landfall to run landfall coverage. It's going to be a big moment, that probably, because this storm may still be a Category 5. We are putting a gap in between, though, because we don't think the storm's going to get there probably for another 7 hours or so. And I would recommend rest for those who are still ahead of the storm, who have prepared, because you're going to need it for the early hours and, depending where you are, the later hours of tomorrow.
And that really also goes to the messaging of, the time of day there right now. Of course, for people like myself on the East Coast of America, the Philippines are exactly 12 hours apart. So it's past 10 p.m. local time for the Philippines right now. A lot of people are going to be going to sleep soon, and if you're in Bicol or South or Central Luzon, that means that by the time you wake up, whether you're waking up really early in the morning to be actively awake during the storm's passage, or if you're just trying to get a good night's sleep and you feel safe and secure with your preparations that you've done, that the time to prepare is really over tonight. Obviously it's going to be getting very dark outside if it isn't already for a lot of these places in the Philippines. And at that point, especially with conditions set to rapidly deteriorate very soon, it will not be safe to go outside anymore or continue any further preparations in advance of the system. I will say the government's been very proactive in making sure that there are evacuation orders that people are heeding very seriously. Over 200,000 people were ordered to evacuate ahead of this storm, and hopefully those people are heeding those orders, particularly for the low-lying areas that are set to be impacted.
As we've seen on the screen for a couple minutes here, I just want to point this out. Isaac's showing us radar imagery and the eye visible now on radar.
Yeah, really clear there. Before you go on about whatever else you were going to say, Strat. Somebody was asking in the chat, and I'm sure a lot of people are also asking this and not familiar with the CDPS scale. I want to, if either you or Tim could perhaps tell people what exactly a CDPS Stage 7 type situation is here, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Devin would be able to explain it a lot better, but the CDPS, which is the Cyclone Potential Destruction Scale, is a metric that one of our team members, Devin, put together to really quantify the damage from a tropical cyclone. This being Goni as a Stage 7 is a very catastrophic kind of system. The best analog that I can think of off the top of my head is Hurricane Andrew of 1992 in terms of the damage potential that we could be seeing. And if you need to have an idea, just look at Miami-Dade County in Central Florida during Hurricane Andrew, and that's what you can see for damage. Now we're not saying that it's going to be all of the Philippines area, but where the direct landfall, which would be along the Bicol, Catanduanes region of the Philippines, could see that kind of damage.
Stage 7, catastrophic on the cyclone destruction potential scale. Let's take some more questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. We're here for another 45 minutes, maybe just a little bit more than that. What's the forecast storm surge potential? PAGASA saying that it could be 3 meters in pretty much the signal 4 warning area, I assume.
Yeah. If there's any solace with this system, the fact that it's pretty small in size, we're talking, at most 115 or so nautical miles for gale force winds, means that the storm surge total won't be pushed up as much as it would be, say, with the larger storm with this intensity. Say, Mancut, for example, would be able to produce a much more significant storm surge. Someone's asking, Nathan, do you get the eye temperature right now for the storm?
You caught me off guard there. Just a moment. We'll get the.
I'm sorry. I'll see if I could take some other questions real quick as well.
I've noticed that this storm really just. Yeah, Andrew is one of the best comparison we can make, and that's probably the comparison that you would probably least want to hear.
And if you have
Keep
any
in mind
questions
this-
right now, oh, so go ahead, Isaac. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna quickly say, keep in mind this is stronger than Andrew at this point in time here. Andrew was, I believe, if my mind serves me right, it was 175 miles per hour, 165 at landfall here. This is, a lot stronger than that at this point. So just keep that in mind when we are talking about Andrew territory here. This is stronger than Andrew at this point in time. Strat.
Someone's asking as well, what is the winds in the hour right now? Concur with the JTWC with our estimates, saying 175 miles per hour. That's around 280 to 285 kilometers an hour sustained winds. So an extremely powerful Category 5 system right now at its very core. Fortunately, it's a very small system, so those winds are kept to a pretty small area, but still extremely dangerous for Catanduanes, Bicol, and Luzon where it's approaching. If you have any other questions you want to answer, start your message with Force13 and text her at Force13 in the YouTube chat. Lights up the message in a bright orange, and I'm sure Paul's keeping up with the Facebook chat as well. And speaking of Paul, someone's asking how this will affect the area around Laguna and Laguna Lake in particular. I know he's in Cebu himself, but right now at least...
Ike's also here, I believe.
Oh, Ike, who's actually in Laguna. Do you want to take that one then?
Yeah. The storm surge in Laguna will be possible, but it will be only mostly the soil becomes saturated with water.
Fortunately for Laguna at least, and Laguna Lake too, the southern deviations in the track mean that the odds of the harshest typhoon conditions are dropping. They are still very likely to see gale conditions at minimum, get some substantial rainfall, at least a little bit of surge along the lake area as well. But because this isn't coming as far north as expected, say 12 to 24 hours ago, the odds of them getting major typhoon conditions, potentially up towards Category 3 equivalent, are going down just because the odds of the direct center of the storm going over them are dropping right now as well.
Let's see. So, okay, someone just asked what is going to happen to Dolomite Beach in Manila Bay.
Oh my.
Definitely will be washed. Black sand will be washed in.
Okay, so do you guys wanna know the story behind that, or no?
Go ahead. Why not?
So there has been this cleanup, Manila Bay beautification project, and the plan was to add dolomite sand to.
Yes, I've heard about this actually.
Yeah. Now, during the passage of Molave, can you back me up with this? There's actually, was that black sand that has resurfaced, and then some of the dolomite sand actually was washed away to the sea.
Yep. And
So basically,
go on.
go ahead.
Black sand and trash was washed in. The white sand was washed out when waves were really high.
So basically, that's what happened with Molave. Now that Goni is now approaching, maybe we could see a wipeout. Let's just call it like that, a wipeout of the sand. Some of it may remain, but most of it may be washed away, depending on the waves in Manila Bay, of course.
We've got a new intensity estimate, and I'm afraid it's bad news. We're estimating that this storm has intensified further now and currently has winds near 180 miles per hour sustained, which is 295 kilometers per hour, I think, or 290.
Oh.
and the central pressure down to 890.
Oh, wow.
I mean, so this storm really just continues to. I don't want to say defy the odds, but that's basically what it's doing, fighting off 3 eyewall replacement cycles almost to maintain intensity, despite, storms really not being able to hold 175 miles an hour plus for about 36 consecutive hours now.
Which is what this storm has really done.
Yep.
And this is one for the record books, really.
For sure. There's also a question coming in, or this is a little while ago, asking about Camarines Norte, which is in far northern Bicol, a bit northwest of Naga. What kind of impacts do you expect there? If this was 24 hours ago, it was looking like the potential for this system to pass barely north of there, if not clip a landfall right in that area. And in fact, that's what the latest JTWC cone still calls for, although that in itself is over 8 hours old now. And since then, we've seen a much more continuous southwestward shift in the storm to the point where it's more likely right now to see an initial Catanduanes landfall and then potentially try to move over that region afterwards than what was expected 8 to 12 hours ago. Still, that means that major typhoon conditions are more likely than not to occur in that particular region. If I'm not mistaken, there are currently Signal 4 warnings in effect there too. So obviously an extremely dangerous situation for that particular region.
So, a reminder, we've just upgraded this storm once again to winds of 180 miles per hour sustained, that's around 290 kilometers per hour, with an estimated central pressure at 890 millibars, an eye temperature indicating plus 10 right now, cloud tops extending all round the eye, minus 80s at least, minus 80 at least, and some areas heading slowly towards minus 90 degrees. Those lower temperatures denote stronger, not necessarily directly stronger, but higher cloud tops, which usually corresponds to a stronger eyewall structure. And we're here for another 40 minutes to discuss this storm with questions until the next PAGASA update at 11 p.m. And we'll be back with more live coverage early in the morning when the storm makes landfall. In the meantime, after we finish streaming tonight, it will hand over to our automated stream, which will show you the latest imagery live throughout the night. And you can also communicate through our social platforms and our Discord server. Strat. Euxinator.
Well, I actually see a question from Riar. I'm not sure if you were here earlier, but someone asked, do you think the impact of Goni and Manila tonight will be comparable to Typhoon Zhangshang or Milneo in 2006? Which we already touched on that a bit, and to sum it up for you, it could be worse than Zhangshang. So you need to make sure that you're prepared.
That was a pretty bad one, although yes, this one could be worse, at least in some places, but let's not forget that typhoons and all hurricanes and storms like this, some areas that don't get severely impacted on one occasion might get worse conditions the next occasion, whilst another area that was hit worse won't get it as bad. We've got to take a look at what's in front of us right now, and comparisons quite often aren't particularly helpful, especially when talking about effects on land.
Yeah, I mean, right now, at least, what we can say is a fact, this is a Category 5 super typhoon, which is hard to see losing Category 5 status before it comes on shore. Even so, it would still be very likely to maintain super typhoon strength, which is against expectations even from yesterday. So the expectations for landfall strength have been pushed up substantially, obviously highlighting the extreme danger that the system poses. Fortunately, again, it's smaller in size, so those impacts aren't going to be as massively widespread as a larger system, say Mancut, for example, of a couple of years ago, which made landfall in northern Luzon. But the areas that do get hit by this core are going to see extreme impacts.
Yeah, and I just have two questions. The first one I want to touch on is why is from West Syria, and basically he's asking like a comparison from like for this storm to an Atlantic storm, if I were to compare a storm from the Atlantic to this, um, uh, Dorian, I don't know.
No.
Intensity wise.
I mean, you're
um,
looking more towards Wilma.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Gilbert. No, not Gilbert. Gilbert's too large.
Yeah, and
Gilbert,
but
in
the
terms
other
of structure, how it looks like Gilbert a little bit, although it's much smaller than that.
Yeah, exactly. And the other question is from Jason Villanova, and he's asking about the conditions near Tagaytay and Batangas.
Where's that, sorry?
Tagaytay.
Cavite?
Tagaytay.
No,
Is that
Oh,
yeah, it's
Taga-
Tagaytay. Yeah.
Tagaytay? Yeah.
yes. Well,
Yeah,
that area will
I don't
be
know
expecting
can you answer that?
typhoon conditions, most likely, in the whole of Batangas.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
if this was, say, a day ago, we'd be expecting typhoon conditions further north, but the southward deviations are putting Batangas right more in the direct risk of typhoon conditions.
Yes. And for Tagaytay, I'm not necessarily sure. If that's close to Batangas, then yeah, you could see typhoon conditions with it too.
Paul?
Tagaytay will definitely have typhoon
Yeah.
force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's in the vicinity of Taal Lake. So near Manila, near Batangas, right in the middle of them.
Mm-hmm.
a
Ike,
couple more questions.
Yeah.
we'll just get on that in just a moment. Any change to the conditions at your place? Because you're the closest person on here to the typhoon right now.
Not really. Just a small breeze. No rain.
So still fairly
Well,
quiet,
before the storm.
naturally.
Just a little bit of.
Would note the new JTWC forecast cone has just come out, actually.
Okay.
I'm not sure if anyone can pull it up on the stream. I'll toss
Yep.
the link in
No, we've already got
our
it
chat
here.
here
I
really
think
quick.
Isaac's showing
Oh,
this.
perfect.
Is it number
So a
15?
southward shift in that.
Is it number the cone number 15?
I think
it's
that's up
16.
to date. Yeah, that's up to
Is that
date,
one?
that one.
Okay, so this is 15 then. Okay.
They take it 18 miles north of Manila. Or is it south?
That's probably slightly south at this point. I mean, they're still
Yeah,
expecting
18
a
miles south of
sharper-
Manila there.
They're still expecting a sharper turn back to the west-northwest now, although notably they are calling for a landfall at Catanduanes and then in Bicol, which they weren't before. You know, notably though, that initial point is 3 hours ago, almost 2.5 hours ago. Since then, I'm almost certain we've seen more of a slightly south track of their center point. So if we don't see a more consistent and immediate due west shift, then we might see this get shifted south again as well.
That there is pretty much suggesting a Category 5 landfall. The next point on that graphic is after Catanduanes landfall, and it's still a borderline Category 5 there.
Based on the satellite loop, it actually still is going southwest, it seems like.
It is, yes. As long as that remains the case, you'll keep having to shift that cone further south.
And a couple more questions coming in too, this time about potentially later this week as well, about Atsani. While its exact intensity still isn't particularly clear, that could also be another Philippine impact that we have to keep an eye out for as we head into later this upcoming week. And for those curious about Fujiwara impacts, these storms won't be kind of mending around with each other in any way. They won't be getting close enough to directly interact. However, Raleigh's very strong outflow is actually what's causing Atsani to remain so weak right now. It's completely shearing the system to bits. But as Raleigh moves west and west-northwest over the next 2 days, pretty quickly into the South China Sea, and this system moves and stalls briefly, moving northwest, they'll be far enough apart where that won't be a major issue anymore.
And we're looking at it on the JTWC track forecast here from Isaac, and you can see there, I think that's gone further north than what they were saying, but the cone is enormous, so they're not very confident on that.
I wanted to know, they don't have it, like you said, as close to the Philippines as it did in the last forecast from Conan. They also have it peaking a little weaker than originally forecast. They forecasted its peak, or near peak intensity as 105 knot typhoon. Now they have it peak as a 80 knot typhoon, but it looks better near peak as an 80 knot typhoon there.
So that's another one to watch in the wake of Goni. And as we go back to this imagery, you can see Atsani on the right hand side. That's even blowing up some convection there as well. But quite obviously Goni is still the one to watch. If you missed it from just a few moments ago, we have now given it winds of 180 miles per hour, which is sustained. That's 295 kilometers per hour, and an estimated central pressure, a new low at 890.
It's just extremely unfortunate that as the storms continue to approach land that we have not seen any sort of substantial weakening. We've seen some fluctuations over the past 24 hours through, this is the second eyewall replacement cycle in the past 24 hours now. But, that just hasn't translated into the storm dropping any substantial strength. I'm sure Isaac can concur with this. Last night, Eastern time at least, so the morning time in the Philippines is heading into the early afternoon, it was looking like that eyewall replacement cycle was going to do some more damage to the storm. The minus 80-degree cloud top rings had completely dissipated, and we were hoping that would remain the case, but it just really hasn't translated to any serious weakening of the storm.
Yeah, I went to bed last night thinking that it was fortunately starting to weaken here, and hopefully it would make weaker landfall than forecast, but that's of course not the case anymore. I woke up and I saw the cloud tops bounce back to what they were yesterday morning, and just really amazed at how it's been persistent on trying to at least maintain its intensity here as it nears landfall in the Philippines, an extremely dangerous situation.
Let's take a look back at that radar imagery again that you're showing us, Isaac. Is that still the very latest?
It's up to 9:30 in the morning my time and Central Standard Time, so 10:30
p.m.
Yeah.
10:30
p.m.
So,
Yep, it's still late.
so
Yeah,
that's
10:30
right up
p.m.
to date.
PM in Central.
What can you tell us from the radar there? Anything of note?
I could see maybe, it's hard to tell because it's still kind of in the far range of this radar site here, but it looks like maybe the outer eyewall here maybe trying to get weaker here. I can't really notice it as well as I used to here on the satellite
It's tough because
radar.
it's two radar zones there, and they've both got
Yeah,
different qualities.
yeah.
But it definitely looks like Catanduanes is getting hit right now.
Yeah, oh yeah, most definitely. We could easily see that inner eyewall there on the radar site. Just quite clearly there, pronounced. That's where you're going to see those Category 5 force winds is right in that little inner eyewall there. You see passing through the radar site.
And outer band rains also affecting Bicol Region and also for significant parts of Samar right now by the looks of it, and even down to Leyte. I can't quite see down there, but looks like there's some rain passing through there too.
Yeah, I can't say it for the life of me. Catanduanes is pretty much right under the first really major rain band this typhoon has to offer here. You can't see the island, of course, because it's right under all that rain there. And don't mind this little error on the top left of your screen. That's a radar error there. That's not like a supercell that's been stationary there. That's a radar error there. Don't mind that.
Yes, but well, it's creeping in. The thing is about this storm, though, it's so small. I just hope people don't get caught by surprise, because you'll see conditions rapidly get worse in the course of 3 to 6 hours, really.
Yeah, in that outer eyewall, if it's still really pronounced in there, and it's like you said earlier too as well, it's kind of hard to say because it's between two radar sites here. So it's kind of hard to say at this point. It still could easily be there, but I really can't tell. But if it is there in that outer eyewall, you're easily gonna see typhoon conditions in that one, and then you're gonna see a little bit of a lull.
Typhoon conditions there, and then a lull, and then all of a sudden, 180 mile an hour winds.
Yeah, all of you're gonna get a little bit of a lull, and then you're gonna probably think, oh, it's probably the worst. It's probably past, and then bam, we're gonna get those Cat 5 winds in that inner eyewall there in it.
Thankfully, the eye is so small that not a huge area is going to get that. You're quite
Speaking of
unlucky if you did get the eye.
Speaking of the eye, how big is the eye in the latest estimates right now?
Yeah, so we had it 13 miles not long ago. The latest now is, it's hard to tell, something like 13 or 14 miles. It's not really changing, but I must say the latest imagery is still looking pretty good. I really hope it doesn't decide it wants to intensify some more before landfall.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in this phase where, when it first became a Category 5 super typhoon, expectations were, okay, it's probably going to peak within the next 12 hours, and then, go on a much more serious weakening trend. And of course, it did reach its first peak then, according to our estimates. But unlike expectations, it just hasn't really begun to wind down whatsoever. So at basically every point, we've had to reiterate, further intensification is possible in the next, 12 hours or so. And even now, unfortunately, that's still the case up until potential landfall in Bicol or Catanduanes. And I think just to really push a very important point too, Isaac was mentioning it earlier. For a lot of people, it's late in the evening now. It's too dark outside to really continue any preparations. And if you're in Catanduanes or Bicol, the early morning hours, 3 to 6 a.m., are potentially when the system could begin to make landfall. So the worst conditions will be beginning in the very early hours of the morning. So, for those that still are maybe a bit further out in Luzon that have the last second to prepare, please make sure you're taking advantage of that and heeding any orders given by local officials for your safety.
As stated in the last hour, Manila is one of the many areas in southern Luzon that could get typhoon conditions. Over a 50% chance there. Round about the 50% mark is where Manila is, so a coin toss on whether typhoon conditions happen there or not, but 50% chance for that is quite a high percentage when we're talking about these kinds of things. And tropical storm conditions pretty much a given, destructive winds possible.
Yeah, I mean, definitely would say, and those typhoon conditions, as the storm gets closer to land, will become more certain for certain areas. So unless we see a more serious shift to the south, you could see those odds go up a bit. I mean, again, to highlight, it is fortunate, if there's anything fortunate, that because the storm is relatively small in size, that those typhoon winds really barely extend 35 nautical miles at most from the center. So we're talking, 60 to 80 kilometers is the maximum extent of typhoon sustained winds in any quadrant.
Just want to give people a projection of timing. The GFS model that came out earlier, just before we went on the air, suggesting that the storm will be just east of Catanduanes by what time is that? I'm trying to figure this out. By 2 a.m. and then by 8 a.m. it's expected to be over Bicol, probably Albay, and then by 2 p.m. it will probably could even be over Marinduque, and then towards Manila by evening. Still not buying these models. Models think this storm is going to collapse in a most ridiculous way. I mean, we'd like it to happen, but there's no chance this is going to be a 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm by the time it gets to Manila. There's no chance of that.
No, I mean, something that has on its side to maintain intensity at least is that, it's moving at around 20 kilometers an hour or so right now. It's going to be picking up a bit in forward speed. So, like you said, for those times, in about a little over 24 to 30 hours from now, this thing's going to be moving fully into the South China Sea and be clearing out of the Philippines. So that forward movement speed is going to give it a bit less time over land to rapidly weaken from more rugged terrain. And also the fact that it's just making landfall and moving further south of prior expectations. It's not going over the very high mountain chains in central and northern Luzon. mean that it's going to have slightly less mountainous terrain interaction with the core, which could limit weakening somewhat, although it is still expected to drop numerous categories, at least in intensity, while over the Philippines.
An utterly crazy storm. We'll be getting an update from PAGASA soon. About 20 minutes is when their forecast, or expected to update their forecast. And hopefully we'll get that information rather quickly. Then we'll be finishing up our commentary here, but don't worry if you're staying tuned in. This should... it automatically does it, Strat, doesn't it? Transfers to the automated stream, which shows all the latest imagery.
It takes a couple minutes at times, but if you refresh your page, say 5 minutes after the stream ends, you'll automatically be back at the automated stream. But it is also in the description as well. It's below the synopsis and information about the storm, the link to that. And that will be in the chat later, along with, if people want to keep watching things, a directive to go watch there.
And then it won't be long until we're back live commentary again for the storm's landfall at this rate, which looks like it's going to be... we're still thinking maybe 4 or 5 in the morning if it makes landfall in Catanduanes, but if it makes landfall in Bicol, and it's going to be a little bit later than that, maybe 6, 7 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, even so, we're looking, say, 8 hours or so at most from our first landfall. And, because that's going to unfortunately be in the early morning hours when people are really waking up, the time to prepare is really over, especially for Catanduanes and entering Bicol now, where conditions are only going to rapidly deteriorate from here on out. So for anyone watching this that's in those areas, this isn't really the time to go outside as long as you're already heated instructions in a safe place, because if you think you need to do something last minute to prepare, and you're already in a relatively sturdy and protected area, if you get caught outdoors, taking a little longer than expected in the dark, and things get really bad really quickly, you're putting yourself in an unsafe position.
Thomas is one of our Force 13 forecasters. He's put out the latest cone from us on this. Well, I thought we'd be able to get it a little bit more centered onto the screen, but you can still see it at any rate. Currently going with that 180 miles an hour. In 12 hours time expecting 155 miles an hour over Luzon there, and then down to category 1 in 24 hours with 85 mile an hour winds. So yeah, that's about right, although the JTWC forecasting that it will still be 110 miles an hour by the time it exits the Philippines, which is interesting. That's still about 175 or 180 kilometers per hour. If it went over Manila, that could be the winds that you could get.
Yep, I mean, that's why we already have those signal 1 warnings in place for Manila. It definitely would not be surprising to see those go pretty soon, maybe at the next update, up to signal 2. And then we'll probably see much more widespread signal 3 warnings coming in pretty soon, and potentially more widespread signal 4 warnings, either this update spreading further north into Bicol, and have those potentially spread into southern Luzon.
Yep, we'll wait up for the update from PAGASA, which is due in just over 15 minutes. This is what it currently says. Signal 4 warnings for Catanduanes, as you'd expect, for part of Camarines Sur. Signal 3 for much of the rest of the Bicol region and northern Samar. Signal 2 extending up northwards to Aurora province, including Manila, and to the south there, covering at least part of Samar as well, Masbate, Romblon, Mindoro, and the very northern tip of Panay, and Signal 1 for those areas on either side of those that have the higher warnings. In Luzon, extending as far north as Isabela. Reminder what PAGASA have been saying, as of 8 PM, they still don't have it as a super typhoon. Winds of 215 kilometers per hour near the center, gusting to 265.
I wonder if it's still gonna be the same, their 11 PM update.
If I'm not mistaken, right, there's the JMA's forecast track that shows some re-intensification right before landfall.
Where?
In the South China Sea, I mean.
Yes.
Not before the Philippines. Okay, so that's also a change to keep in mind later on too. The JTWC doesn't call for that right now. They're saying they actually decreased the expectations for Vietnam landfall from 55 knots yesterday down to barely 45 knots, maybe even 40 knots, depending on the time you're looking at. But the
It's
JMA
a tough one.
is expecting this system right now, at least, to regain some strength in the South China Sea, although it is more likely than not that it won't be a typhoon when it makes landfall in Vietnam.
So there we have it right now. Any new changes with the storm structure, though? Just looking again at this satellite imagery, any suggestion that... Nope, the suggestions are that it's strengthening, I'm afraid to say. But that's what I'm seeing right now. Latest imagery. It's a very interesting eye. It's sort of gradual from the eye wall to the eye. It's more gradual than you would expect normally.
What I'd really want to see, if anything else, because structure-wise, we've been talking a bit about this eye wall replacement cycle. I'd want to see if there's any microwave passes that they probably won't come in new ones, at least before we go off the air in about 15 minutes or so. But at least between now and our next live event, if we can get a better key on that structure, because the eyewall replacement cycle from last night was obviously very apparent in microwave. We're seeing the structure of the storm be inhibited much more significantly then, and even at the start of the stream as well, it was much more apparent about the new one that was ongoing. We saw some microwave shots. We saw a lot of eye wobbles and oscillations, and the cloud tops getting a bit frayed and messed up a little bit as that tried to take a toll in the center. But the ability for this storm to fight off numerous eyewall replacement cycles has been quite remarkable.
I think radar would probably tell about half the story at this point. It's not, of course, fully in range here, but you could still kind of see the apparent concentric eyewall still with this super typhoon right now.
That inner eye wall is definitely there, Strad. I don't see that this is an active eye wall replacement cycle.
What I will say as well, I mean, it's not really contracting to try to choke it off, despite some of the earlier imagery we've seen. You would typically expect a storm that's undergone, 2 separate eye wall replacement cycles in the span of 24 hours, and at least trying to start a third potentially, to have a much wider wind field than what we have with this. We're still talking typhoon winds extend at most 50 to 60 kilometers from the center. Gale force winds extend at most 200 kilometers from the center. If we have a very strong storm that's gone through multiple replacement cycles, you would typically expect a bit of a larger wind field than that. So if there's any saving grace or silver lining to the storm right now, it is going to be that the area of worst impacts are going to be confined to a very small area.
Now, as of 29 minutes past 10, the center of the eye is now 144 miles off the coast of Catanduanes.
Say, just looking at radar.
Did I say miles? That's kilometers, just to be sure.
Kilometers.
Well, I must say, looking at radar here, I mean, earlier in the frames, you could really see that pronounced. Let me see if I could stop it here before we take it back here a little bit. You could see there the really pronounced concentric eyewalls there. You see the outer eyewall, and of course you see the inner eyewall quite clearly there. And then in the last frame, let me see if I could take it to the last frame here, 40. You could see again that inner eyewall still very much so present, but the outer eyewall doesn't really look too as pronounced as it was earlier on. Now keep in mind this radar site is down near Tacloban, Philippines. So it's kind of far in its range here of this radar site. So it could be that the radar site may not be able to really pick it up here, and the radar over here would be able to pick it up a lot more clearly here. So it's kind of hit or miss here whether or not that outer eyewall, is still very much present, or if it's starting to weaken here.
It's in a bit of a dead spot there for a couple more hours.
I can personally tell you that the outer eyewall right now is fine. The inner eyewall is clinging on for its life.
And that's the voice of Devon, who is our chief hurricane analyst. All across the world, he's been tracking storms for many years. And, well, this one is one that you've been, well, to put it politely, going crazy about recently.
Extreme me.
What's that?
What?
I think that was a accident, like audio glitch there, real quick.
I've
I'm
got
sorry.
Anyway, yeah, that happens. Anyways, I'm just now waking up here, trying to process all the information here. And, you know, with all these cones that have been produced, it's like, oh, it's gonna be a Cat 3 at landfall. Up it maintained intensity for a little bit longer. Now it's gonna be a borderline Cat 4. And now we're talking about the storm being less than 200 kilometers away from landfall, 185 miles an hour, and it's about to complete an EWRC, which if it completes before landfall, you're talking about another 10 to 15 miles an hour added on top of it.
Really?
Just an extremely dangerous situation.
What makes you think it could intensify another 15 miles an hour in the next 6?
The eye coming out fully and the inner eye wall completely dying. Will it do that in 6 hours? Probably not, but if it does, that's what'll happen.
The latest radar frame in here.
But the inner eye wall right now is clinging on for dear life. It's literally doing loops on the edge of the outer eye wall, and you can very clearly see that on your infrared imagery of choice.
Yeah, that's quite clear. There it is again on the radar imagery, so that's a new frame there. We might be able to see the northern side of the eye fairly shortly. How often do these images update?
Every 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
So this is really standard for tropical cyclones that are as intense as Super Typhoon Goni, and this is definitely a super typhoon. There's really no disputing that one. I mean, we're talking, it's already 180 miles an hour. And it's a very ugly 180 miles an hour, which I can't even believe that is a complete oxymoron, but that's legitimately the case here. You've got the cloud tops going all the way around the eye. Negative 81s have been all the way around the eye. I've been watching this since like 5 in the morning here on the East Coast. We're talking about 6 hours. It had those cloud tops going all the way around the eye then. The eye looks better now than it did then. And the cloud tops have, if anything, gotten a bit colder since then. So, yikes.
Well, that triggered us to put our estimate up just slightly, and maybe more intensification ongoing.
Yeah, I'm hoping that doesn't. I'm hoping that the inner eye wall just clings on for dear life and doesn't just collapse. Because if it does, that outer eye wall is gonna contract and become the new one, and then, yeah, you pretty much get the picture there. We don't want that. That would basically be like an Irma 2017 scenario, if you remember that, where it was a Cat 4 for the longest time after passing north of Hispaniola. And it had a structure similar to this, and then literally in the final 2 hours before landfall, it actually ended up completing its eyewall replacement cycle and smacking Cuba as a Cat 5.
We do indeed remember that one well. We covered it here too. Still looking at Isaac's imagery there. Look at that latest frame. The eye very clear on that one.
Yep, and this scale, this one that I'm showing you, the rainbow infrared imagery, this is off the scale. This stops at negative 80 degrees Celsius here, and it's going off the scale here. And that's what all the white splotches you see there around the central dense overcast, the CDO of this storm is cloud top temperatures, like what Devin said, over negative 80 degrees Celsius, which is just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty unfortunate too, considering last night that ring of minus 80s was completely dissipated during the eyewall replacement cycle. Then it was, feeling, oh, we might see more significant weakening at that point,
Always
but
got
it's
the
really came back
impression.
with the force.
Always got the impression it would come back.
I mean, I didn't want to have that impression, but we had seen, at least at the time, what it's looked to end up being potentially more serious weakening, and that really just did not continue to materialize whatsoever. And we have, like everyone's been saying, we see clearly on the satellite imagery, full ring of negative 80s, and that eye looks to even be warming now in the latest frames, in particular. So an extremely, extremely dangerous situation right now for Catanduanes and Bicol and Luzon. There's an impossible way, there's no way to overstate the danger this represents.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to do some calculations in the background here because this is just a big yikes. I don't really have any other words to describe this. Nathan, I don't know if you're taking a look at rapid scan imagery, but taking a look at the frames, since I would say 1425Z, it looks like that we're starting to get minus 85s wrap around the entire eye.
The entire eye.
Oh no.
Okay.
I don't know if you're seeing the same thing. I think I might need to get my eyes checked. I am hoping so. But it looks like minus 85s are starting to wrap around the eye as of 1425.
It wouldn't surprise me. I'm not looking exactly at the very latest, but at the minute, but that wouldn't surprise me at all. And eye temperature, we've just got a reading of 14, so that could even encourage us to upgrade this again.
Please no.
Yeah,
It's
I
almost
hope
beyond
not as
words.
well.
It's almost beyond words to describe what we're seeing right now. No one.
This thing's not weakening until landfall. That's just not happening.
Yeah, I mean, no one really expected such a strength in the first place. And when someone managed to get to Category 5, a little over 36 hours ago, the expectations were, oh, it's probably peaking off right about now. And it's not only gone past that point, but it's held past that point for the past 36 hours now, and is showing no signs of slowing down whatsoever before landfall.
Yeah, like we thought that this was going to take a typhoon of what's its name from 2014 arc, where it would peak as a Cat 5 and then
Hagupit.
slowly weaken as what?
Hagupit, yes.
Yes, Typhoon Hagupit, where it would peak as a Cat 5, everyone would get super scared, and then it would slowly die as it went towards the Philippines. But no, this is maintained. This is maintained.
We're not going to make any intensity decisions before we finish here, at least for now, but it does appear that it is strengthening again.
Just look at how in that last frame, I don't know if you could see that, but there's the yellow for the dry air there, that little tiny little blotch of dry air there that just signifies how clear that eye is starting to get here. I don't know, let's see if I could stop it here in the last frame, but look at that.
That eye must only be about 8 miles wide now, though.
Remember, that's the inner eye wall that's dying. So that might start to be getting to be collapsing here.
I'm thinking that might be the case. Have you got the radar again, Isaac? Any new radar frames?
It updates every 10 minutes. It's going to update in about 2 minutes from now. The latest frame is 10:50 Eastern.
And we're also waiting for PAGASA's update. I don't know who will get it first. But I'm sure our team will be watching that closely. Paul's over there as well, and Ike.
Yeah, I am.
Watching very closely indeed.
What is PAGASA saying in terms of rainfall?
A lot, I think. Intense, heavy to intense rains. I'm not sure how they define that.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more than a foot, still around 15 inches. Which, honest
Basically,
goodness,
they're
hasn't changed
estimating
in
at
the last 3
around
days.
Yeah.
they're estimating
So,
at around 300 millimeters of rain.
300 millimeters of rain. Yeah, it's going to be more than that.
I mean, mountainous areas, of course, will see locally higher amounts, but I mean, just based on the sheer structure of this storm, and if we really get confirmed and sustained minus 80-degree cloud tops all the way around the eye, the rain rates in particular are going to, be shooting up higher than prior expectations too. So it wouldn't be surprising to see
There's
localized rainfall a
not
bit
as
higher.
there's not as much of a correlation there as you would think. It more correlates to how quickly the storm dissipates over land, rather than the actual intensity itself.
Well, now that you've mentioned it, I've got to throw this at you, Devon. Are you as baffled as I am, or maybe not, as the case might be, that the GFS and the HWRF want to weaken this storm at a very high, very fast rate, from landfall in 6 hours, a Category 5 potentially, to a mid-range tropical storm by the time it leaves the Philippines? Is that complete nonsense, like we think it is?
This thing's going to be passing over the most thin part of Luzon, right? Like,
Potentially.
just to the south of Manila?
Yeah.
Yup.
And what are the mountains like through that south part of the island? I don't know what the mountains are like through the south part of the island.
There's a few.
There are also no mountains in the southern Luzon. Only mountains
Yeah,
that are
what is it like compared to northern Luzon? Let's say Isabela province.
very flat.
That
The radar
storm
frame
will
just
be
came in.
fine. That storm will be fine.
Now, the JTWC, they're saying that it will leave the Philippines probably as a high-end Category 2. That sounds more like it.
That sounds appropriate. I would say mid-range Cat 2, but yeah, that sounds about right. And that's not to say if it doesn't immediately try to strengthen as soon as it gets back over water, because we've seen that happen before too. Okay, just plugged in the numbers from JTWC because they were gracious enough to decide to put together size data for the storm. Rainfall hasn't changed, 15 inches. Size hasn't really changed either, honestly, around 9-10 points. Big change, landfall intensity.
Yep.
160 knots, because
Really?
yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to be
Really?
looking at here.
You think this storm could make landfall with winds of 300 kilometers an hour?
That'd be 300 kilometers an hour. 187 miles an hour is 300 kilometers.
There's a
So,
chance, in my
right
opinion.
here, with 160 knots, 185, no, it would be 295 kilometers an hour.
Well, you get the point, but you think it's going to make landfall that strong?
Well, we don't see any reason why it's going to be weakening. Right now it's 155 knots, and it's more than likely going to go up a tick a little bit right before landfall, because of the said completing eyewall replacement cycle. Like, what's going to make it weaken?
There's a new radar frame that's just come in apparently.
Let's see it. Isaac?
Oh yeah, the 10 east, no, 11 in the morning Eastern frame came in, and you could see the northern eyewall more pronounced in the scan, and you could see still the outer eyewall there in the frame there, the radar site, getting a better and better look as time goes by here, as the eye gets closer to these radar sites in the Philippines.
Yeah, that inner eyewall is hanging on for dear life. Hang in there, buddy. Hang in there, please. Take as much time as you need to die.
And just to remind people who might be confused, Evan, why exactly is it a good thing that eye wall persists?
It's not going to strengthen. It'll at least maintain intensity, but as long as that inner eye wall doesn't collapse, it won't strengthen.
We're just waiting for the 11 p.m. update from PAGASA. It's not come in here just yet, but I imagine there's a lot of traffic going to them right now, so it
Yeah.
could get a little bit messy.
And if anyone cares, yes, that does make Goni a stage 8.
Stage 8 on the CDPS scale.
Yeah.
None
So
of the
that'll
Atlantic
be the largest. That'll be the largest threat of the year. That beats Laura by a pretty significant margin.
And I think it's important to point out it does that despite its pretty small size, which is a feat in itself too.
When you're scoring 28 points for wind alone, like it's only scoring 10 points for size, which is pretty small for a hurricane, typhoon, whatever, and 10 points for rain, which is about average, honestly. So, it's scoring below average for size, about average for rain. It's just when you're packing a landfall intensity of over 180 miles an hour, which that's a mid-range EF4 tornado, mind you, sustained winds for several hours. Not pretty. Not pretty at all.
Yes, and in comparison to that, it like if this thing even got stronger, it would be basically it would just be scary.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that I want this inner eyewall to just hang on as long as possible, because as long as that thing stays there, it's not going to strengthen. It'll maintain. It's not going to strengthen. I don't see, unless there is some critical failure or some very lucky increase in wind shear, like an hour before landfall. I don't see this losing intensity from here.
Paul and Ike, any news at your end right now on the ground?
None, but I am refreshing PAGASA's Facebook page and their website, maybe in case I can catch the new update.
Okay.
Nothing much.
Yeah, I think we're a bit used to having the National Hurricane Center and the Atlantic update, 20 minutes ahead of time. So having something more on time comes as a bit of a unusual occurrence for coverage.
Well, we're holding on for that update right now, and we'll see what they say. Now, maybe it's that they're having a proper consideration about what they're going to do, whether they'll call it a super typhoon, whether they'll issue Signal 5 warnings, whether they'll extend Signal 4 warnings.
Signal 5 warning should have been issued hours ago.
That's
exactly my opinion.
Yeah, that's how we think about it, but PAGASA still only lists this storm at of 8 p.m., 215 kilometers an hour, which is what is that?
That's 10 minutes sustained, though, right?
10 minutes sustained.
Yeah, 10 minutes sustained.
So it's nearly
10 minutes.
Nearly 150 miles an hour.
That's 10 minutes sustained, so that would be. Let's see here. So 200 is 120, so that would make it 127, about ish, 130 maybe.
I mean, even so, though, we've talked to us before, but there's always new people coming in and out. Whether or not, PAGASA decides to issue Stage 5 warnings shouldn't change how people are preparing in advance of this system or have been preparing.
Well, I can go ahead and say that the Catanduanes, that is the island to the east of Luzon. They're the big island to the east.
Yeah, Catanduanes.
Catanduanes, yeah, that one. If you're on that island right now, you need to rush any last-minute preparations to completion right now, and then find some shelter and don't come out of it. Seriously, I'm not even joking on that one, because you've got maybe an hour, if that. And I don't even think you have that long before you're going to have sustained 30, 40, 50 knot winds coming in. And once that ends up happening, it's too dangerous to go outside. It's too dangerous to be outside. You really need to be in your shelter. And we're talking about a storm as impressive and as powerful as this one. You really need to be in a designated shelter within the next hour. And you might not even have that long. As far as people in eastern Luzon, they've probably got an additional hour tacked on to that.
And just adding on to that too, to compound the issues, it's already going to be dark there. 11 p.m. local time, and when this storm's coming on shore, it's still going to be pitch black. So if you really aren't done with preparations, you have to be extremely careful, and especially your Catanduanes, where conditions are about to rapidly deteriorate, if not already. If you get caught outside in that kind of situation, you're putting yourself at a very high level of risk. So please make sure that you're doing everything you can to stay safe.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Catanduanes isn't already getting 50 knot gusts from this storm. Like, they are
right under that.
Definitely, yeah, they are definitely starting to feel it. Southeastern Luzon, they are at least okay for now. That will rapidly change. Like I said, I'd give it less than an hour to complete your preparations for Catanduanes. About 2 hours in the southeasternmost tip of Luzon. That's going to be in effect of this storm. If you're further west, obviously you have more time. This thing's moving at, I think it's 16 kilometers per hour west.
Something like that.
It's closer to 20 now, I think, because the last update was 13 knots. So it's moving at 20 kilometers an hour about.
It's 13 knots now. Wow. Okay. So maybe, so if you're towards the central end of Luzon here, you're a little bit more inland, probably about 3 hours. But yeah, everyone's preparations need to be absolutely rushed to completion now. If you're on Catanduanes, I would probably say that your time for preparations is rapidly closing, and you need to get some shelter an hour ago.
As soon as possible, if you haven't.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, there's been a lot of proactive, action, even though the forecast landfall point has shifted considerably south in the past day. Over 200,000 people have been ordered to evacuate, of course, and we have, a mass set of warnings now up in place. And like you're saying as well, for anyone that is finishing preparations right now, that time, especially in Catanduanes, is really going to run at Emily. That southwestern quadrant, which is going to be the first to impact, has maximum extent of gale force sustained winds of about 150 kilometers or so. So that's going to start creeping on to Catanduanes right now, if it hasn't already, in the eastern portion of the island. And from here on out, conditions are really just going to drop off more and more.
And I know that we're focusing on Catanduanes here, but should also be noted that northern Leyte, I believe that is, northern Leyte would also need to be prepared for some very heavy rainfall, which looks like is occurring right over the islands right now. There have been some impressive thunderstorms blowing up over there. And for two, you're going to be getting some sustained tropical storm force winds from this as well. We're talking 40, 50 miles an hour, probably maximum sustained. Gusts could be higher, obviously. So it also should be noted that people in Leyte, they need to also rush their preparations to completion if their window has not already slammed shut.
A new radar frame is in, and you can see more and more of the northern eyewall, inner eyewall there on radar. And I guess while we're talking about preparations and the struts here, would any of you guys like to, give any advice to people who may be trying to find last-minute shelters or find last-minute areas to ride out this typhoon in, for anybody that may be curious, that's still on the path of this typhoon and still has maybe just a little bit more time to do so.
Well, the Philippines, they get hit with storms like this all the time. So I imagine that there are some great contingency plans in the place for typhoons incoming. When you're a massive island chain situated in literally the most tropically active part of the planet, like literally the highest base was like 50 miles offshore of Luzon for the entire world. So you're talking the most active spot on the planet, and it's an island chain right in the middle of it. So when we're talking about contingency plans, especially with a storm of this size,
Oh,
you're
sorry to interrupt
talking.
you, but PAGASA has already released their 11 p.m. update.
Oh, sweet.
More places added to signal number 4, and still PAGASA has still not upgraded it to Super Typhoon. So we have Catanduanes now, the eastern portion of Camarines Sur, and the northern portion of Albay. That's signal number 4. So signal number 3, Camarines Norte, the rest of Camarines Sur, the rest of Albay, Burias, and Ticao Islands, Sorsogon, Quezon, Laguna, Rizal, the eastern portion of Batangas. Oh my god, that's a lot of places actually. It's hard to read. Especially with the small text that they use in the website.
Yeah,
But
well,
don't.
yeah. I think we'll have do they have the graphic yet too? Because I don't know if we can get that up on the stream right now, but we can certainly get it within the next couple of minutes too.
Yeah.
From what you're saying, though, for a graphical standpoint, they've just, really expanded out the signal 3 and 4 warning zones.
Yeah. I am waiting for the TCWS map right now. I don't know why they don't include it in their website.
I honestly don't know, but I mean, we're gonna get that up in a second.
Yeah.
But I mean, seeing the storm, make its final approach. I mean, we're talking closer to 6 to 8 hours from landfall right now. Having a lot more signal 4 and signal 3 warnings only makes sense, considering the information that we currently have. Even though the system's pretty small, we're seeing this potentially make landfall in Catanduanes in the next 6 to 8 hours, and then after that, it'd probably make landfall in northern Bicol before trying to move across southern Luzon. That graphic there right now is on the stream isn't the updated warning map yet. That's
I'm looking
3
at
hours ago.
I'm
still.
looking at the updated one right now, and hopefully we can get it loaded shortly onto here. But we're literally fighting with traffic to get it loaded, though. There it is. Okay, this is the latest one. I don't know how much. I was just out of the studio there for a minute, so I don't know how much you've said about it. But the red zone's there, signal 4 extending into part of Bicol Region. Signal. Did I say stage 4? I'm getting on the CDPS right there, aren't I? Signal 3. Almost to Manila, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest difference right now, at least from the prior advisory. Those signal 3 warnings have been extended much further to the north and west, and even to the south. Northern Samar now has a signal 3 warning in place because of how far south the system's moved.
And signal 1 warnings extending almost to the northern tip of Luzon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this goes for those in the chat earlier that were asking, could, Laguna see a signal 3 or signal 4 warning? Well, there's your signal 3 right now. So the answer to that question is already a yes.
Possible that we'll have signal number 4.
Yeah.
We'll
Possible.
see.
We'll
Yeah,
just see in the following hours.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wouldn't surprise me at all to see those signal 4 warnings move further north and west as the storm, gets closer to impacting some of these areas. But just the fact that signal 3 is so widespread already ahead of the storm's final approach to landfall, and us knowing that it is clearly a super typhoon strength system category 5, directly emphasizes the very large risk to life and property that this system is posing.
By the way, as it looks like PAGASA's Pagasa has high confidence in their trap.
Hmm.
I mean, right now at least, we're talking 6 to 8 hours from landfall. It's going to be very difficult to see any new substantial deviation in track forecasting before landfall that hasn't already occurred. If it was 2 days ago, we can see those larger shifts, like from an initial expectation central Luzon all the way down here to Catanduanes or northern Bicol for its first landfall. But I mean, this close to landfall, unless there's a wobble that barely dodges one location in the eye and make its first impact somewhere else by a couple miles, it's going to be harder to see any significant variation in the expectations.
Agreed.
I got the latest forecast cone from Pagasa here. You're able to see it.
Yep, there it is right now.
And this is the latest graphic.
That's about right, that forecast.
Looks like they have it almost
moving
entering the South
southwest,
China
though.
Sea. Looks like they have it moving. They have it almost entering the South China Sea by around 8 p.m. Philippine time on the 1st of November there. In about 24 hours as of this update, by the looks of it here. And again, this is the latest forecast cone issued by Pagasa at this point. If anyone has any comments on it.
It's just that I think that's quite accurate.
We can go back to radar here. Oh, got a new frame on the radar, and you can see a lot more of the.
Just getting there now. Back to the radar imagery. There it is again. So, center of the eye drawing ever closer.
Yeah, you could see the northern eyewall now a little bit better now. Now that it's getting closer towards where the radar sight range there. You could see the outer eyewall as well, still there, and again, really dangerous Category 5 typhoon. And you're going to see those Category 5 winds in this inner eyewall right here. You're going to see that's where you're going to see those Cat 5 winds. In this outer eyewall, you're going to see easily typhoon winds. Not Category 5 winds, but this typhoon winds here. And then you're probably going to get a little bit of a lull, and you're probably going to think maybe it might be over, it might be the worst of it, and then bam, we're going to get straight right into that core of those intense, violent Category 5 super typhoon winds.
The situation's still looking very, very bad, and not getting any better, I'm afraid. But for the time being, we're going to go away for a break for a while. We'll be back with more live commentary when the storm is literally making landfall, the final run-up to landfall, which will be in the early hours, most likely. So definitely stay tuned for that. This stream will pass over to the automated service, which will still show you the latest satellite imagery of the storm in real time. In the meantime, you can stay up to date on our social platforms, Facebook and Twitter, and of course our Philippine team, active probably all night tonight on there as well. And you can join our Discord server, discord.gg/Force13 for live real-time discussion on the storm with other cyclone trackers from all around the world. But for now, we are Sorry, what was that?
I was just going to say, just as a reference point as well, the link to that automated stream is the pinned message in the chat right now, and for anyone that wants to stay up to date with when we're going live next, you can be sure to subscribe, turn on the notification bell as well. That'll go off when we go live later today for landfall coverage.
And you can also be sure that's going to be soon. We're talking a few hours, but we got to relax for a little bit and rest our voices for a while, and this is just a storm on a different level.
Yeah, agreed.
And just really hope everyone is taking every single last precaution possible to stay safe during the system. In Catanduanes, Bicol, Luzon, Samar, Leyte, all these regions are getting significant impacts, especially those that are going to be going straight through the core. So please stay safe during this system.
Goni is on its way. It will be there soon, possibly already delivering near typhoon conditions on Catanduanes, which is staring down the storm's final path there. It could make landfall in about 5 hours. maybe even slightly sooner than that, but we will be live whenever that time comes to bring you the latest. And more than ever, stay safe out there. This storm really means business. Good night.